Porter County Commissioners' regular meeting for January 24th, 2023. We'd like to start the meeting by asking Steve Burkowski to come forward for our word of prayer, and the Pledge of Allegiance after will be led by Commissioner Larry Harvey. Please stand if you can.
Let's pray. Father in heaven, we come before you today. Lord, what an opportunity we have here, a privilege we have to come together as a community. Lord God, for good, for bad, maybe even the ugly sometimes, Lord God, we get to work through things through a process. Lord, this morning as I was considering the words I might share during this invocation, I heard the words peace in the process. Lord, let's pray that there is peace in the process. Lord, there are many people from all parts of the community here today, some here for celebration, and so we celebrate, some for business, so may the business be accomplished. We thank you for this opportunity. We ask for your blessings in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Steve, and thank you, Commissioner Harvey. Excuse me. Before we go into the approval of the minutes, I'm going to call on Commissioner Wilkinson. She has some changes that she would like to bring forward.
For the Port Authority meeting minutes, need to change former commissioner to my name, and also for the Port Authority workshop minutes need to be changed from former commissioner to my name.
Is there a number that?
Yes, sir. Here.
Mr. Chairman, we'll take care of that. Commissioner Wilkinson, we do apologize for that.
That's okay. And then on consent agenda, item B, we have a $464,283 resolution, and then in the notes it says 446. I feel like that's a typo on the crossing numbers.
Yes, ma'am, we'll take care of that during the processing of the reading of the information.
All right. Item B, page 7. The minutes of the regular December 13th meeting.
You have them, Ashley? Okay, thank you. Chair will entertain a motion if there's no further.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of the minutes as corrected, stated in our packet.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries unanimously. Next, if there's anybody here this morning that came to hear item 5B on the agenda, which was the rezoning of the racetrack area, that item has been pulled from the agenda. The applicant could not make it this morning, so I just didn't want anybody that was here for that case to sit here through the meeting when it wasn't going to be heard. So again, item 5B, rezoning R22006, has been removed from the agenda this morning. And with that, we'll move into item 3, the presentations, and we'll call on Ms. Denise Bramlett to come forward. Okay, thank you.
Good morning. Yes, so I was here already, and she couldn't make it. Denise couldn't make it, so I was asked to.
Could you give your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, Steve Burkowski, 3704 Krill Avenue, Palatka, Florida, the great Palatka, Florida. Coming this morning just simply to present an informational announcement. There are organizations, about 24 organizations in our community, including myself, representing Open Door Church of God, other churches, nonprofit agencies, community agencies that are coming together to put together a COAD forum. COAD is a community organization that are active in disaster. So this is an effort to organize the community entities for a proactive approach at any possible future disaster incidents that happen to our community. We know that there are resources that come at some level from the federal and state, but we all know that recovery goes long beyond what those efforts usually provide. And so we are trying to equip ourselves as a community to provide the resources needed to help people when disaster strikes. So I believe that all of you commissioners received some information. If not, it should be available to you that gives more details of what this is all about. We've met for the last couple of months and really excited about the efforts that are being put forth. We have agencies that deal with just addiction recoveries and resources that are available during disaster, shelters for our pets, food pantries, the Red Cross, thank you, and other agencies. We're also partnering with Putnam County's Emergency Management Services, and so they have a representative that is collaborating with us to help us in any way that we need. So at this point, an executive board of these about 24 organizations has been formed. We are meeting again tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. at Open Door Church of God, 3704 Krill Avenue, right down the road here. It's open to anyone that is interested. It is still in the beginning stages, but we're excited about where it's going to go.
Any questions at this point?
Yeah, I have a question. Looking at this list, how did you reach out to these individual groups? I know naturally, like the American Red Cross would be involved, anyway, and I know you're trying to just get a group together to coordinate to better serve the citizens during these emergencies. But I don't see any representation from South Putnam unless I'm missing.
I'm not
something.
sure that the list is comprehensive. I've actually just received some of this paperwork that you have to look over. So I believe that there is some, but we are open to more. It's just like, as I said, just getting started. The word's getting out. It wasn't myself personally that's leading. I'm just representing today. But I believe a lot of agencies were just contacted just to see if they wanted to be a part. Resources like the American Red Cross have been contacted just to pull from their resources, glean from their experiences and advice in other areas, other counties in terms of how all this will work. Because when a disaster hits, what do we need? We need response right away. We need all agencies to step up and participate. And there are a lot of organizations in our community that we don't even necessarily know about that could be available to help, are ready to help. Even organizations that just have people, manpower, that we could just tap into. And if all this goes the way we'd like it to, we'll be able to just, reach out with a phone call or a click or knock on the door and say, hey, we've got to step up and act and help people.
Denise would be the contact person.
Denise is one, Sheila McCoy, and you could use myself.
All right, thank you.
I was told that they were seeking the possibility of a commissioner being on that committee. Is that correct?
I don't know that for sure, but I believe so.
Okay, well, I just wanted to bring it up in case commissioners wanted to give it some thought if they had interest in serving on that committee.
Oh, absolutely. It's
Not
open
put
to
them on the spot today, but give them the opportunity to think about it.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Again, we meet again tomorrow, 10 a.m., Open Door Church of God, 3704 Crow Avenue.
Well, I was hoping I'd get a volunteer, but didn't.
Actually, I will.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been there a couple of years, so yes, I would do that.
Commissioner Wilkinson will be happy to be part of your committee. Thank you, Commissioner. If there's not any more questions, I'll move on with the agenda. Thank you for coming today. We're going to move into item B, which is employee recognition, and ask Ms. Crone to come forward.
Good morning. How are you guys today? So Brooke Conway works in our library services. She is over the family and children's programs, and she was nominated for her excellent work with taking initiative and running the program. She does a fantastic job decorating our libraries for engagement. I think the photos were in the packet for you guys. And she she works at the Palatka branch, but she also works directly with each branch manager to ensure that there's consistency throughout the branches. And she's just a great self-motivated employee and again, just an excellent representative of our county. So congratulations for December of 2022, Employee of the Month.
Just want to say thank you for this. I really enjoyed working with the library and being a big creator.
Okay, next on the agenda, I'm gonna ask, Honorable Matt Reynolds to take over.
All right, thank you, sir. First person I'd like to have come up is Katie Fazio. She can come up. Katie is our employee of the quarter for the last quarter of 2022. Katie recently came back to the clerk's office, ever having worked in the clerk's office previously, been back a little over a year now. And Katie has been an absolutely tremendous asset to the clerk's office, and multiple coworkers had some very nice things to say about Katie and her wills to help this past quarter. So thank you, Katie, for being an employee of the board.
Oh, come on, Katie, go say something to us. I still think you should give a speech, Katie.
I've never seen her, that's right, I've never seen her at a loss for words like that. So. The next person I would like to have come up is Caitlin Schuler, and Caitlin is our Employee of the Year for last year. Caitlin was Employee of the Quarter earlier in the year, and when we were looking back at who was going to be an Employee of the Year, she definitely stood out. She was the one employee that had received comments from employees, different departments, not just the department that she worked in. So Caitlin really stood out, and so she's Employee of the Year this year. So thank you, Caitlin.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, yes.
last but certainly not least, I would like to recognize Mrs. Julie McLean. She would come forward. Mrs. McLean has dedicated 20 years now to the Putnam County Clerk's Office, and I will tell you that she goes above and beyond to make sure that her and her staff are doing what's right for the citizens of Putnam County. So thank you, Julie, for your 20 years of service.
Can't believe Julie didn't make a speech. Thank you, Matt, and congratulations to everyone that won the awards this morning and for your service to the county. Next, we're going to go move to item D, and I'm going to ask Brenda Bridges to come forward for a tax collector's office update.
Not quite as tall as Matt, so that's a pretty tough act to follow. My presentation might not be quite as fun as awarding people for their service. But, my name is Brenda Bridges. I am the Deputy Tax Collector, 323 St. John's Avenue, Palatka. Unfortunately, the Honorable Linda Myers could not be with us this morning, so she sends her apologies. So with your indulgence, I'll walk you through the update. I've provided each of you a packet, and in that packet, it just kind of gives you an overview of the tax year collections for the past 3 fiscal years. So those collections are from October through December, the first quarter. It is broken down by ad valorem and non-ad valorem taxes and the parcel count. So the parcel count does vary year to year. That is based on things like lot combinations or lot separations. And then the total charge to collect. So you can see over the past 3 years, the collection rate pretty much remains the same. What we did see this year was that the majority of the collections were done in the month of November, which is really unusual. It's usually kind of split between November and December. But it is interesting, and as you can see, the total charge to collect has increased over the past 3 years. That total charge to collect is the total tax that the tax collector's office collects on behalf of all of the taxing authorities. So that includes the board, the 5 municipalities, as well as the school district and the St. Johns River Water Management District. Those collection are then distributed on a prescribed schedule as dictated through the regulatory requirements through Department of Revenue. So that just kind of gives you an overview of what's going on there. And then the second sheet in your packet kind of highlights the other end of the house. So in addition to the tax collections, the tax collector's office also represents the executive branches of government: Department of Highway Safety, Department of Ag, Department of Health, and Florida Fish and Game. So the numbers that are provided, so when you walk into our main office, you're entered in through a queuing system. that queuing system can tabulate the number of customers that we see. In the past year and a half, we added those kiosks to our branch offices so that we can better collect and use that data for what's going on in our offices. So you can see for the month of October, the number of customers for those 3 offices were a little over 8,000 customers. Our office touches almost every taxpayer in this county based on the local services provided and the state services provided. And then on average, each person that walks in that door processes 2.5 transactions. So most people have more than 1 car, they're renewing more than 1 registration, title, hunt and fishing license. They can do all of those things at one time. In addition to the local services with the tax collection, some of the other services that we provide are in concert with the clerk's office with tax deeds and delinquent property taxes. In your packet also there is a pamphlet for the property tax installment plan. We have discussed this in the past. We're continuing to try to get this word out. The property tax installment plan allows taxpayers to pay their taxes in 4 payments and receive the same discount as if they had paid those taxes in November. So April 30th is the deadline to get an application into our office to participate in that. The installment plan is only for current taxes, cannot be used for delinquent taxes. And you can go online to our website, that's putnamtax.com, and there's an application that you can fill out there. If you do not have access to the web, you can visit any of our 3 offices, and we'll be happy to help you get signed up for that. It is one of the best offerings that the tax collectors can provide to taxpayers, as I'm sure you hear from constituents that they struggle every year with paying their property taxes. So if you have constituents that have questions, please feel free to send them to us. We'll be happy to help. The other pamphlet that I provided you is on mobile homes. So I'm sure that's a question that you get a lot from constituents on the different ways that mobile homes can be taxed. They can be part of real property and or they buy the decals every year. So there's some information provided there. And again, if you have constituents that have questions, please feel free to send them to our offices. The state services provided, I just kind of wanted to highlight some of those. One of the other services that we provide now in all 3 of our offices is Tag Express. We have seen an increased demand in online services. So registrations is one thing you can do online. You can pay your property taxes online. Unfortunately, driver's license is not one of those things, so we still have to have those people coming in. So we're constantly looking for ways to help reduce the number of people coming in and expedite those transactions for them. So you can order those tags online and pick them up at any of our 3 offices. And then all 3 of the offices are full-service offices. The only distinction in them is that the Palatka office is the only office that does the hazmat testing and fingerprinting. The 2 branch offices cannot do that. And then concealed weapons permits are offered in Palatka and the Crescent City office, and birth certificates in the 2 branch offices. We do not offer that service in Palatka because we're close enough to the Department of Health. It just didn't make sense, but we understand there are a lot of people in the west and south end of the counties that have issues with transportation. So as many services that we can take out there to help them from having to come forward, we're happy to do that. Because of those numbers and customers in those offices, we have in the past year done a little bit of renovations and making some changes in all 3 of our offices. So Interlochen, we just recently took an additional space there, that being the smallest of the 3 offices. It was quite a challenge when COVID hit, so we just obtained an additional 1,000 square feet. So we're working in stages to get that finished. And then Interlochen and Crescent City historically have been manned by 3 people because of the increased demand in transactions and additional services that we've taken on. Since 2014, we've gone from 3 to 5 people in those 2 offices, so we are continuing to grow, and I just wanted to highlight some of those things that we do. Be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Mr. Adamsack.
Yeah, I just want to thank you guys for housing the Veteran Services out in Interlochen. I don't know if he's doing Crescent City, I think here at the government complex, Crescent City. But thank you for doing that. I think it's a great service for people. I'll just speak to my experience. I use the Interlochen location, and I've always had a really positive experience there. I've gone in there when there was people lined up all along the wall, and it still seems like you're in and out of there in 30 minutes, worst case. And just great job. Kudos to people in Interlochen. I really haven't interacted with the ones in Crescent City and Palatka to say anything, but my observation of people in Interlochen got some great staff, and I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Wilkinson.
Brenda, thanks for doing a great presentation. A quick question on the fingerprinting, is that specifically for the hazmat and CDL, or do you do them for other people who need them for other
No,
services?
the fingerprinting services for hazmat are strictly for that. It is a unique piece of equipment, and the fingerprinting for concealed weapons is also a separate. So if you're coming in for a concealed weapons permit, we can do the photo, fingerprinting, and do the entire application there. We cannot issue new concealed weapons permits. We can only issue on-site renewals, but I believe the state is looking down the road at us being able to do that down the road.
Okay, thank you for that.
Okay, I had 2 questions. She just asked one of them. Were you looking over there about those? The tax by the quarter program that you were talking about a minute ago. If you owe taxes in November, you get paid quarterly on those taxes, or do you pay in advance or the taxes for next year?
So the installment plan is set up on an advance, so it's based on the previous year's taxes. So your first payment is in June, second payment would be in September, and then the tax roll is then certified to us, and then the last 2 payments would make the adjustments based on what that total is for the year.
Thank you. Is there any further questions, Ms. Bridges?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I should like to comment, echo Commissioner Adamsack's comments about the west end, but thank you for the facility in South Putnam. I used it the other day. Only had about a 10-minute wait. It's about 15, 20 people in there, I guess, total. The staff's very friendly. We also have a lot of people from northwest Volusia County use that office also. So the service you provide down there is definitely appreciated. Appreciate the office.
Thank you. It's interesting. Both of the branches can see anywhere from 150 to 200 people per day, and the main office anywhere from 3 to 500 per day. So we are busy, and you're correct. Both of the branch offices see a lot of individuals from other counties. They are traveling from Orange County to come to Crescent City as well, Volusia. The wait time in some of the larger cities, in addition to having to make appointments, they might be 4 or 5 months out. So we are seeing a lot of people. We get paid the same amount, so we're happy to see them.
Thank you for coming today. We appreciate the update. With that, we're going to move on to item E, which is our countywide project update by Deputy County Administrator, Ms. Young.
Thank you, Chairman. As a reminder, this list is not intended to be an all-inclusive list of every project or initiative underway by county departments. It's intended to be a snapshot of those most important to our citizens, our commissioners, or our administration. With that, this morning, we start with an overview. The administration is working on a port project. The barge port feasibility study conducted by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is in progress with an estimated completion date of July of 2024. A consultant composed economic report to reinforce the feasibility study pending submission to the Corps. The final draft is being reviewed and tweaked by the consultant. The Army Corps' economics and staff. The application for Port Infrastructure Development Program grant with the United States Maritime Administration was approved for a sum of $353,000. Staff has also been contacted U.S. DOT Grants Management Supervisor regarding the grant conditions and requirements. Staff is working with MARAD to meet the grant agreement prerequisites. Staff has also developed and submitted a grant application with the state's Department of Economic Opportunity for Rural Infrastructure Fund Grant Program to supplement the federal funds sought to finance an extensive and comprehensive port development plan. The application is still under review. The animal control facility negotiations with the top-ranked firm have begun. Information technology as the virtualization has been completed, including GIS and the clerk of courts. With the recent completion of Nutanix implementation, uptime has increased to 99.99%. Suncom numbers for Putnam County Sheriff's Office have been repaired. IT will be porting the Putnam County SO numbers from Suncom to AirSpring over the next few weeks. Parks and Recreation has the pickleball courts at Triangle Park. The asphalt has been poured and is curing. The lights will go up by the end of this week or early next week. Parks and Recreation, the Francis Youth Sports Complex, the LED sports light upgrade is complete. All 4 smaller fields have lighting that has been converted to LED. Parks and Recreation has the Project Play Splash Pad project. The splash pad well has been dug. The contractors are working on pouring the concrete slab and placing the sterilization equipment to bring it online. Melrose Youth Sports Complex, the LED sports lighting upgrade is currently out for bid and the vendor will be chosen within the week. John Theobald Sports Complex, the contract for the award for the LED sports lighting upgrade and installation has been made. Putnam Sports Complex, the contract has been awarded for LED sports lighting and upgrade and installation. Flora Home Park Historic Building, the beautiful Heart Pine flooring was installed right before Christmas. The volunteers are busy finishing the carpentry and installing the attic. The kitchen cabinets installation was delayed due to laminate countertop supply chain issues, and hopefully they will be installed within the next few weeks. Fort Gates Ferry Landing, the fabrication of the metal ramp is complete. The installation of the ramp has been delayed due to the recent storms, and anticipation date of completion not yet been determined. St. Johns River Railroad resurfacing Palm to the CSX crossing at the Palaca Fire Department. The anticipated advertisement date for construction has been moved to February of 2023 to allow for the city to complete the water main improvements in the area. County Road 310 Bridge Rehabilitation, the completely executed contract has been obtained and the pre-construction meeting is scheduled for January 30th, 2023. Septic to sewer conversion Phase 3, construction is underway. Anticipated date of completion is March of 2023. Dirt to pave 21. Paving activities on Balsam, Norad, Tropic, Cypress, Walt, Park, White Hill, Nancy, Lloyd, Lynn, Ida, Dixon, Sandy, North Lake, George Drive, South Lake, George Drive, Palm, and Atkins are complete. Darren is expected to be completely paved before the end of this year. Dirt to pave fiscal year 2022 and 23. RFQ submittals have been obtained and the initial evaluations are scheduled for February of 2023. East Putnam Drainage Flooding Mitigation Phases 1 through 4. Phase 3 construction activities are complete and Phase 4 permitting and design activities are underway. St. John's Avenue Drainage Improvement, State Road 19 to County Road 309C. The notice to proceed has been made to the contractor and construction activities are scheduled to be completed in October of 2023. St. John's Avenue Multi-Use Trail construction is anticipated to begin by October of 2023. South Palm Sidewalk, Druid Street to Silver Lake Drive. The construction contract has been awarded and the pre-construction meeting is scheduled for February of 2023. Saratoga Harbor Drainage Project. Public Works is seeking proposal to complete the project using alternative means approved by the BOCC. James A. Long and Jenkins Middle School Safe Routes to School. 100% of the design plans have been approved by FDOT. The completely executed funding agreement has been obtained by FDOT. Advertising for construction services is anticipated in February of 2023. County Road 315 resurfacing project. 60% design plans are under review and the final design is expected to be completed by March of 2023. Port Buena Vista wastewater treatment and plant conversion and sewer main extension. The bids for construction services have been obtained and coordination is underway to secure additional funding from FDEM. Paradise Point sewer system hardening and generator installation. One bid was obtained to complete the project and coordination with FDEM is underway for additional funding considerations. Countywide guardrail installation, repairs, and replacement. The pre-construction meeting has been completed and activities are anticipated to be complete by April of 2023. Countywide road resurfacing 2022. Resurfacing activities are underway. The anticipated date of completion for all roads is March of 2023. Countywide striping project. The project is complete. East Putnam Septic to Sewer Project Phase 4. RFQ documents are underway and the anticipated date of advertisement for design services is February of 2023. Countywide bridge repairs of 2022. The pre-construction meeting has been completed and activities are anticipated to be complete by April of 2023. East Palaca Water Plant Retrofit Project. The project is underway. Barden Ranchette Road resurfacing construction activities are complete. Punch list items are underway. San Mateo Water Extension Project, bid documents are being modified to bring the project within budget. Anticipated date of re-advertisement is February of 2023. North Putnam Drainage Project, the completely executed funding agreement has been obtained and staff is seeking professional engineering services to complete the design services needed. South Putnam Drainage Project, the completely executed funding agreement has been obtained and staff is seeking professional engineering services to complete the design services needed. The Central Landfill, the new scale house is in place at the Central Landfill. The deck, wiring, and plumbing are in the process of being completed. Interlock and drop-off sites at the landfill. The new scale house is in place at the interlock and drop-off site with new deck and pole in place. Bunkers and household hazardous waste need to be constructed. Once the building and facilities are complete, work will begin to get the scales up and running. That concludes my report.
Any questions today?
Yes, sir. Have you ever thought about being auctioneer? I mean, that could be
I'm
like
open.
your side gig or something.
I'm open, yeah.
Now, on a serious note, you mentioned that the negotiations with the top-ranked firm have begun for the animal control services.
Yes, ma'am.
I've received a couple emails of people concerned that we're just going to get a pole barn. So can you sort of elaborate on that? I know you can't say everything, but
Yeah, so let me say, hypothetically, what happens in this stage is the design firms now have had an initial meeting with us where we've laid out our budget goals, our facility goals as far as office space, what Ms. Kathy has designated as minimum kennel size, what we need for cats and intake, and all of the things that are needed to run that facility, as well as any concerns that may have been expressed, i.e. with a pole barn. There has to be mitigation for emergency conditions, wind and rain and weather and that kind of thing. So all of those things are now in consideration with the firm. They're going to come back to us after they've met with their engineers and designers and come up with their best plan. And then we'll do some final negotiations. And if we're satisfied on staff's side that it's the best product to bring to you, we'll bring it to you to discuss. If we're not, then staff will cease negotiations with that top-ranked firm and move to a second-ranked firm. But we are in communication with that firm, and they're currently working with engineers and designers to see what they can tweak in order to materially achieve our goals by bringing it within budget as well.
okay, very good. I got it. Thank you.
Mr. Adamsack.
So what's left on Fort Gates Ferry? And I guess the reason why it's become more of a priority in my head, seeing as I'm on the west side, but it is a travel route. I actually stopped at Hogwaller during their last event, and there were several people that were not from the area that were asking about Fort Gates Ferry because they'd like to be able to travel to some of the restaurants and stuff in South Putnam, things like that. They don't see the value in driving all the way with their big rigs and stuff all the way across, disconnecting their trucks and going all the way to Plaque, coming back down and coming all the way back around. Because from like Hogwaller, for instance, about an hour and 20 minutes to get to Rivers, whatever that wooden restaurant is down there, or Three Bananas, or wherever they would want to go. And I think we have an opportunity now that Hogwaller is getting so big, and then there's a lot of use of some of the camping facilities now that we're coming out of COVID, that there's a big opportunity here to use the ferry now, more so than there was for the past few years. I was on the west side of the ferry landing, and I think we have some boards that replace stuff, and just wondering what the status on that side is as well.
So let me preface it with my disclaimer of saying these are snippets of project updates, and I'm not intimately involved in all of them, but I do understand that there's a connector, a wooden connector between the ferry and the ramp that needs some work that we're working on. As far as on the other side, honestly, I'm going to have to follow up with you, but we can certainly look into that and get you some details on where we are with Fort Gates Ferry.
And the other question I had was already asked by Commissioner Wilkinson, so
Okay.
thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Adamsack, Mike Rodriguez said that there's little to be done on the west side, maybe some boards, that's about it. And I believe DOT will sign off on that so we can use that. Correct me, Mike, if I'm wrong. And at this point, why the landing's not on Drayton Island, on the, by the landing device is not on the structure, I'm not real sure, because the storm's over with and water's down. It should be able to keep Commissioner Adams, I need to caution people with the big rigs, the barge itself is limited, so what it will be able to carry across and the time that it takes to cross and come back, I don't think you're going to see a lot of difference in the time to drive all the way around, even though I agree that we need to get this thing going and moving again, because it will add to, to the economic, impact in South Putnam, definitely.
Yeah, I guess they meant they're bringing their big rigs in from out of the county, but they all have a car on the back of them that they tow.
All right, thank you. With that, we're going to move on. Thank you. And for everybody that was concerned about the auctioneer speaking, we have this on our website every month after the second meeting of every month when she does an update. She goes and places it on the website for people that are more interested in taking a more methodical look at the projects list for the county. Just an FYI. So with that, we're going to recess the Board of County Commissioners, and we're going to convene the Port Authority meeting. And as far as the minutes go, both of the minutes that were listed had the same additions that needed, or corrections that needed to be made from the earlier ones, Ashley. So if you would correct both of those items on both those minutes. Is there any other additions or corrections?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the minutes as corrected earlier.
We have a motion and a second to approve as corrected. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, ayes have it, motion carries unanimously. We're going to move into public comment on Port Authority items. Is there anybody here that would like to speak on Port Authority items? Seeing none, I will close public comment for the Port Authority, and I'll ask Mr. Sam Sullivan, our grants, projects, and legislative coordinator, to come forward with a presentation on the port. I'll turn it over to you, Sam.
Thank you, sir. Give me a second to set up the electronics. Good morning, Commissioners. I'm going to give you a quick overview of the port, where we've been, where we are, and where we plan on going in the future. And then I will yield the floor to Mike Rubin, President of Florida Ports Council, who is present today to address you on port items and answer your questions. As you all know, the port has been constructed in just north of Palatka in 1961, and in 1967 the state legislature established a port authority, which you all sit on. After years of inactivity, we started getting some interest in redeveloping the port and reactivating its commercial use. This was spearheaded by the development of the Florida First Coast Expressway, which is a new high-speed beltway around Jacksonville. Part of that project includes the reconstruction of the Shands Bridge from its current status to a taller high bridge, which would have a what they call an air draft of 65 feet. I think the current one is about 35. So this would allow larger vessels with larger cargo to be able to come upriver to Palatka. With that, and the efforts of Representative Payne and former Congressman Ted Yoho, discussions were established. Josh Gabaton, our federal lobbyist, also assisted in the efforts, and we reached out to the Army Corps of Engineers, who in turn have developed a project which falls under their CAP 107, which is Continuing Activities Program 107, to look into the feasibility of whether dredging the waterway to the port would be a viable option. The problem is that currently, between the navigable waterway and the St. Johns River and the port, the depth is around 6 feet, which is not suitable for commercial cargo. Therefore, they are looking into dredging that area, creating a turn basin by our 400-foot port to create navigable waterways for commercial vessels. So that, the discussion was started. We passed the first phase of the core. We are now in a feasibility study, which started in June, and with a completion date of June 2024. What this will do will determine whether it's economically feasible for the Corps to actually undertake this action and dredge our waterway. We've been working with consultants and the Corps to make this to pass this, to meet the national economic development standards that we would need to get the project green lighted. And that's kind of where we were yesterday and kind of partly today, so I'm kind of ahead of myself. Also, we have worked with the Maritime Administration, also known as MARAD, which is part of the United States Department of Transportation, and we have applied and successfully received a grant from them to build, to make a, what we call a, sorry, I'm losing words, too much coffee already, a productivity plan for the port. What are we going to do with the port? Where are we going to go? What needs to be done? This is going to include examination of our current facilities, our bulkhead, and our docking area, construction in 1961. As you can imagine, there's probably some structural considerations. These need to be examined, so that's part of it. We have acquired the property thanks to the commission nearby. How can we use that property to enhance our facilities and make them viable for commercial use in the future? So that's kind of what the probability plan is going to be for, and it's also going to give us a roadmap on where to go from where we are now to where we want to be, to where we have a viable port that is usable by local businesses and possibly future businesses that want to relocate to Putnam County. So that's kind of where we are today and where we're going to go tomorrow. So keep going in though. We have met with local stakeholders regarding what they want to see done. We continue to stay in contact with them. We have been working with the Corps. We are working with MARAD, and we are working with our legislators to make this project move forward. And before we go to the question phase, let me bring up Mr. Rubin, who can probably address you much more eloquently than I can on the subject.
If you could give your name and address for the record, please.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. I'm Mike Rubin, CEO, President, Port of Portugal, Tallahassee, Florida, 32301. Thank you for and thank you for the invite. I have to start off and say you've got excellent staff that have really done a great job of preparing the facility. As you all probably know, there are now 16. We've become the 16th statutory port that's listed in there in all variety of sizes. And I will say I had the opportunity to visit your port facility area, and you've got some great infrastructure. I get language that you used in there was similar to Port Citrus. Port Citrus is an undeveloped piece of property that I don't know if they're ever going to port over there or not. But you all have excellent infrastructure. Obviously have some air height issues with the bridge, and the dredge needs to be done, but you've got existing bulkhead, which will make the permitting a little bit easier. Obviously, that bulkhead needs to be repaired before you can put anything on there. But you actually have a usable warehouse, which is unusual with some of my smaller, older ports. I use Port St. Joe as an example, which is a historic port. It used to be one of the largest cotton ports in the early 1800s. Unfortunately, when a paper mill plant shut down over there, they haven't done much. But you all have an opportunity, I think, for a development plan. You don't need to do a feasibility study. This is a discussion I've had with your staff. You need to do a development. You've done a great job. You actually were one of the few areas that got a port infrastructure development grant. Not a lot of ports around the country got that. So again, kudos to your staff for getting that. I think you're well underway to looking at development now. Again, going to take that bridge being raised for obviously to get some bulk cargo and other issues that'll be there. But I think it's an exciting prospect for the future of Putnam County. And you have a lovely economic development industrial area there. I'm really here just to certainly answer any questions I can, but to tell you, I think your staff's done a great job of prepping that area for future development.
Any questions of Mr. Rubin at this time?
Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Rubin, thank you for coming down. Appreciate it. Thanks for the kind words about our port. You realize that it's probably a diamond in the rough, and we're looking forward to shine one day very much. You know, the river used to be the main commerce area for Florida, and here we are now, and I think the Spaniards were the ones who tried to find a shipping route through Florida instead of going around it. So, but thank you for the kind words. I have a question for you, because I've been saying this, and I want to make sure I'm right. Are we the only inland port, or is there other inland ports in the Ports Council?
Well, it depends. I wouldn't use the term inland.
Okay.
I think you're exactly correct. St. John's River used to be, Florida was a maritime state before we had roads. Your river port, more so than my other ports are on rivers. Certainly, if you look at the largest port, one of the larger ports, Jacksport, obviously at the beginning of it. But you're probably the furthest inland river port, I would say, in Florida. So when you look at, one of the discussions I've had, when you look at it, you're really looking for a river port. It's not unusual. I mean, Louisiana has obviously several ports that are along the Mississippi River that are similar type issues. So yes, you are probably the furthest inland river port. But when I think of inland, I think of like what Georgia has with respect to a distribution facility that's not necessarily on any waterway.
So if I use the term furthest inland port, I'll be safe with that, right?
Yeah, it's just, there's so many terms, Commissioner. You're exactly right. That's tough.
Well, thank you. Thank you. We know we got something, a jewel out there, and just need to develop it. You're right. It's time for a business development plan. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anything else from you? Yes, Terry?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to take an opportunity this morning to say, this has been a long process. And the board has asked for an update, and I think we got a good update here this morning. Thank you, Mr. Sullivan and Mr. Rubin, for being here. We went up to Tallahassee last year. Mr. Pickens, Commissioner Pickens, was chair, and we sat at the round table at the office in Tallahassee and hashed out a few things. And Commissioners, I just want to say this on the record, because Mr. Rubin did drive from Tallahassee this morning. I think it's admirable for him to do that, but it's kudos to you and your staff, Mr. Rubin, for the way that you've taken care of Putnam County in those 2 years since we first met. And, I think it's going to be great. Ms. Young and Mr. Sullivan and I attended the meeting down in the Keys last June. We are appointed, as you know, by legislation of the governor to FSTED, and then we got voted on to the Florida Ports Council that same meeting. And it'd be remiss if I didn't thank Mr. Rubin again, because I think you were instrumental in helping us get there as well. This is going to be a great opportunity and a great partnership for Putnam County Board of Commissioners and our staff to work alongside the expertise of Mr. Rubin and those consultants that we've had on board helping us get to where we are today. I don't want to forget them either. That would be Rick Farron and Mr. Will Slacker. They've done great work for us in getting us through that first hurdle with the U.S. Army Corps. And I want to go back and also give a little kudos to Josh Gaviton, our federal lobbyist, who set this meeting up. I guess it's probably been about 3 years ago now. So there's been a lot of stuff in the process between when this thing started and today. And I think it's very opportunistic for Putnam County at this time to move forward. As Mr. Rubin said earlier, he toured the port, and I believe, and Mr. Rubin, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the quote was, wow, you're much further ahead of other ports where you are today. And that didn't do anything but give us a lot more steam and a lot more reason for pushing forward with this. And I want to thank some of the folks that are stakeholders in the audience today, and the chamber folks as well, for being very supportive of this. So, Mr. Chairman, that's my comments. But Mr. Rubin, thank you again for getting up early this morning, driving down from Tallahassee.
Thank you so much. Part of what I want to see you like, Commissioner, if you give me another second from then, we've discussed many times in the past that at some point, we were going to try to have a port manager, and when that opportune time would be. I think that time is now, and I don't know if it's something, being that it is the Port Authority,
does the port manager need to be appointed by the port board, or is that something the administrator does? Because I would like to see Sam appointed as port manager as part of his duties at whatever point that you felt like that was opportunity.
Thinking about that the harder way.
Surely you've had this conversation. So I'm putting you on the spot. Sorry, Sam.
Mr. Chairman, you're not putting no one on the spot. We, as you know, last year when we went down to the Florida Ports Council and the FSTED meeting, the county administrator was the pseudo, or whatever you want to call me, port manager at the time to accept all the appointments and sit at the table and have the discussions. Since then, we've gotten back here to the office and we've had some of these conversations, and I absolutely agree for the time being, and I've needed to take a step back with some other duties and anointed Mr. Sullivan to sit in my stead as that particular person head of the port at this point in time, until we get to a position where we actually are moving stuff through the port. Then we might want to come back to the board and revisit this conversation and see if we need to do something different. But as of right now, I've asked Mr. Sullivan to sit in as your port manager to get us through these next couple of years and these processes with the Army Corps in this project, and hopefully through FSTED and Ports Council for some funding.
Would it be appropriate for us to appoint him today as the port manager until such time as y'all need to come back and change how we're doing this, or is that something that you want to do? Because it's the port, I don't know that you officially are the administrator of the port. I don't know.
If you would like to ratify my decision to anoint Mr. Sullivan as the port manager, Mr. Chairman, as the chair of the
I was hoping you'd allow me to appoint him.
I want you to go ahead and do that, sir. I don't want to steal no thunder. Why don't you go ahead and do that, sir? That'd be my pleasure.
If the board agrees, would someone make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we allow Sam Sullivan to be our port manager until such time as we deem necessary to make a change.
Have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Is there any further discussion on this issue? Commissioner Wilkinson?
I just want to say, I think this is a good idea that you've thought about, because you certainly need a port manager there, and until you need somebody that's there, until it's operational, completely operational, then I don't see us hiring somebody from the outside as a new position. So it makes sense, and so I'm for it. Thank you.
Okay, is there any further discussion? You want to discuss this, Commissioner?
Absolutely. So I disagree with, I agree with the premise of port manager. I've been saying it since I think the second meeting that was on this board over 2 years ago. I think it's overdue. I think we need someone that comes from the outside that has port management experience. I respect everything that Sam, that you do for the county, that you do in your role currently. I don't know that you're a port expert. I think we need a port expert. We need someone that can interact at that level. I'm sure that your skills have increased dramatically since you've been involved in this project. I don't know enough to say that you're the right guy for it. I can't say that. I think we need to get a valid port manager who has that expertise prior to it being up and operational, because my view is, and I look for, my intent was to say I look forward to what the port development plan is going to look like. But I think that person's job needs to be wholly focused on the port. So if we're, and the reason why is because that person needs to be finding the partners who are going to utilize the port, the people from the surrounding areas and from the immediate commercial areas that are intending to use the port. I believe that the port could be utilized today at its current depth. We know it can, because it has been used in the past at its current depth. So we could be taking advantage of some things now to start building up leading into that. I know for a fact that there's Navy ships that can land in 6 feet of water, because I've been on them. It's just, you know, I think it's a little premature to appoint a particular person, but Sam, if you get it, I wish you all the best, and I think that you're already have a lot on your plate. So I was calling for as well, just so everyone's aware, that we get a second person to help Sam with getting grants and stuff, especially since 2 years ago we knew what was coming from the federal government with the change in presidency and other things. So I think we're losing opportunities on the grant side, and we're putting someone in a position that is just going to be managing grants, which is what he already does. So, thanks.
Commissioner Pickens?
Yeah, this would be, Sam would be in this position until we deem necessary to hire full-time, maybe somebody with, you know, VADIC background. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes, sir, that's the plan.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Harvey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think Sam's a man of honor and dignity, and he'll let us know when the time's right for us to move in a different direction. I'm sure of that. I've dealt with Sam a lot, so I'm very comfortable with my motion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You have another comment, Commissioner Adams? Your light was on, I'm sorry. Okay, so if there's no further discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Ayes have it, motion carries 4-1. Okay, thank you, Sam. Congratulations on your new title. We're gonna have to get you a new nameplate for your desk now that adds that to your, is there any?
Thank you, Mr. Rubin.
Yes, thank you very much for taking your time and coming down. Is there any general discussion today on Port Authority items? Okay, well, I'm going to adjourn the Port Authority meeting. Did you have something else, Commissioner? I'm sorry, I turned it on and off, I missed it. Go ahead.
No, that's all right.
Not a problem.
So that my original intent was to be thankful for the fact that we're moving forward with the port development plan. I'm not sure exactly what that looks like. Hopefully it has all of those key factors in that we've discussed that have been mentioned, and I look forward to seeing what that looks like and to us progressing that.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Wilkinson.
Yes, sir. Regarding our December 13th meeting, we had a purchase and sale agreement and a letter of intent that was presented for the port. What is the status of that? Are we moving forward with those?
Yeah, the GP property.
Number 2.
I don't know what the second one was. I know the GP property closed last Friday, if that's what we're talking about. What are we talking about?
Those are sales.
Yeah, this was.
Oh, the sales, okay, sorry.
Yeah, we had 2 tracts of land. I think one of them was 14 or 15 acres. They're in this package in our.
I'm almost certain they're still in their due diligence stage of their letter of intent.
Okay, I just have a little bit of concern that we're not being as proactive as we should be with these kind of agreements that are coming forward. I know that we changed the process where they go directly now to the county attorney, and so I just want to make sure that we're more seen as a pro-economic development instead of an anti-economic development. And the reason I say that is because working in real estate for 25 years, you know, I know how quickly you can lose a buyer. And so it's important that we are turning these letter of intent or purchase and sale agreements around in a timely manner. And I just want to go on record and say that. Regardless of who's doing it, it needs to be done promptly and efficiently. And if there's a better process or a different person, or then we need to revisit that to make that process go smoother and quicker, then we can have that discussion. I just want to make sure it's moving forward.
Yeah, I believe that was the reason that we changed the process. We were trying to move up the timeline on when this could be brought to the board, approved by the board, and what have you. And so I think we need to probably give it the opportunity to at least one of them take place again. And then if our economic development representatives come to staff and say, hey, we got a problem, this is still taking too long, then we'll try to tweak it again. But I think we need to give it the opportunity until then to see if the changes that we made actually speed up the timeline. Do you have something, Terry?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. Right along those lines, I met with our economic vice president yesterday morning in my office for a little while. And so the process that we're discussing this morning, one of the things I suggested was that we meet weekly, he and I, and go through our list of items that we have pending, coming before us, future opportunities and things of that nature, so we can get out of this back and forth and start actually sitting down across the table from each other and keeping up with our list of items that we actually are bringing back and forth from the board to to our economic development folks to make sure this process keeps moving forward.
I do believe that both sides feel the urgency, and I think that both sides, not both sides, but all the people involved, feel the urgency, and that's why the tweet, and that's why certainly Mr. Suggs agreed to try and move this forward by having weekly meetings with economic development, just to try to not let this process break down or grow stale, because I agree that in real estate, it doesn't take long when someone looks at somebody who is more pro-economic development, they're gone. So we are working on that. But thank you for bringing that up this morning. And with that, we're going to adjourn the port workshop and reconvene the Board of County Commissioners meeting. And we're going to move into 5A, which is the subdivision 22-001, the Kicking It Ranch subdivision, page 39 of your packet.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Zachary Baker, Planning and Development Services. We are hearing case SD 22-007. The applicants for this request is Patricia and Herschel Sloan, as well as Gary Scott Kicklighter. The request is for a creation of a a 3-lot Type 1 subdivision. The property is located at 230 Price Road in Hawthorne. As you mentioned, the proposed subdivision name is Kicking It Ranch. Just as a notation, this case was advertised in the Palatka Daily News as a preliminary and final plat review and approval. However, the applicant was unable to submit a final plat by January 9th, 2023, which is 5 days prior to today's hearing. As such, the Board of County Commissioners is being asked to review and approve the preliminary plat for the proposed subdivision. The final plat is not required to be reviewed by the Planning Commission and will be placed on an appropriate BOCC consent agenda pending final plat submission. If the preliminary plat is approved by the BOCC today, the applicant has 18 months to complete and supply the final plat. As a background, the parcel was purchased by Mr. and Mrs. Sloan on April 13th, 2022. Mr. Kicklighter, their son-in-law, was added to the deed on May 31, 2022. The parent parcel is 38.10 acres. The subject parcel was split in 2016 under lot split 16-010 using a family density exception, which created ID 310923000000310000. The family purchased this property with the intent of a family, which is also a Type 3 subdivision. However, LDC Section 45-1036(4) requires the property to be owned for 10 years to be eligible for that Type 3 subdivision. Furthermore, LDC Section 45-1035(4) restricts a Type 2 large lot subdivision if the parent parcel is the result of a lot split as defined by the Land Development Code. Therefore, the Type 1 subdivision was the only provision for further dividing the subject parcel. Here you have a proposed plat boundaries of the lots that will be created. You can see we've got one approximate 10 acre, one approximate 12, one approximate 14. All of the proposed lots meet the dimensional requirements for the Ag zoning district, and they meet the frontage requirements by the Land Development Code. Here you have an aerial of the existing property. The parcel that abuts the property on that northwest corner is the 1 acre that was divided out previously. The zoning district for the subject parcel is agriculture. Future land use subject parcel is agriculture. There is a small amount of special flood hazard A in the northeast corner of the parent parcel. There also appears to be some wetlands in the northeast corner parcel and also the southeast quadrant of the parent parcel. Part of the analysis, we looked at proposed lots' adherence to the minimum residential density requirements of the Putnam County Comprehensive Plan, Policy A193A9B, which is the minimum residential density for the agriculture land use. The proposed lots can exceed the minimum dimensional requirements of the ag zoning district stipulated by LDC Section 45501. The proposed lots meet the minimum road frontage requirements stipulated by LDC Section 45632. The proposed subdivision is considered a de minimis impact and should not have an impact on the level of service for Price Road. And since no internal improvements are proposed, i.e. roads, the drainage requirements of a Type 1 subdivision can be waived by the BOCC. Staff is recommending approval of the Kickinit Ranch Type 1 subdivision, case number SD 22-007, as the request is consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the Putnam County Comp Plan. It's compatible with surrounding land uses and zoning districts and is consistent with the requirements of the Putnam County Land Development Code. Also, the Planning Commission at their January 11th, 2023 public hearing unanimously recommended approval of the proposed subdivision for you all to hear it. The applicant is not present today, but I am here to answer any questions for you.
Thank you, Zach. Before I call on you, Commissioner Harvey, when we get around to redoing the land development code, this is another one of those perfect cases to me that staff should have had the authority, the public director or the director of planning should have the authority to administratively do this once they meet all the criteria necessary to within the current comp plan and the code. It's almost unfortunate that these people had to come before us today and spend the money that it took to apply for an application and spend the money and whatever, and I don't know how long this has been going on. Not being critical on y'all, it takes time. But at whatever point that staff deemed that this met all the criteria, in this commissioner's opinion, they should have the authority to sign off on that. Maybe they want to talk to attorney, maybe they want to talk to somebody where it's no liability on themselves or staff to do it, or if it's a gray area application or what have you, then at that point, maybe you do want to bring it to the planning commission and on. But that is part of what I want to build in the land code, is things just exactly like this. When they fit so cookie cutter that there's not even one comment that you can come up with that would say why you wouldn't do this, then they ought to just be able to get that signed off on if that's the case. And again, to reiterate, if there was any reason that staff felt uncomfortable or whatever, then certainly take it right on through the process. But there's been a lot of them since I've been here that have been just cookie cutter stamp things that people pay $750 to $1,500 and wait 3 to 4 or more months to try and get them through, when basically they could have done a thorough staff review, and if they already met all the criteria, or once they gave you the additional information that staff required, then staff ought to be able to sign off on it. And that's just my opinion on the thing. So anyhow, with that being said, I'm going to call on Commissioner Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Took some of my comments away from you. Been dealing with this for quite some time, I have, and just wanted to put that out there that probably over a year now that I've talked to Mr. Kicklighter. What I do like, though, let me say this. The newly platted subdivision, you and I talked about this the other day. There's going to be no more lot splits allowed for that, for what period of time on that. So if they wanted to increase their density, right now it's really just three residents on 10 acres per, well, 3 on the whole 30 acres. But so would you explain that a little bit on the newly platted subdivision real quick?
Yes, sir. And real quick before I move on, Chairman, just to address what your response was in your opinion, staff is working with administration on coming up with a game plan for rewriting those portions of the LDC. And it's worth noting that we did take as many administrative steps as we could for this project. I don't know if we're going to be able to administratively approve all subdivisions. They do have to be signed by the governing body of the county. But yes, sir, we will work forward on making that happen.
Please understand, Zach, I was not being critical. I know
yes,
y'all
sir.
are doing the steps that you have to do. I'm just trying to speed it up a little if we can. And I did know that y'all were working with the staff. I just wanted to give you my opinion that
anything we can do to make this process easier and shorter while not creating a safety problem, then I'm willing to do.
Agreed, understood, yes, sir. Commissioner Harvey, to answer your question, it's not that the lots can never be further divided. Right now, the residential density is governed by the future land use, which is agriculture. And long story short, the minimum residential density allowance is 1 dwelling unit per 10 acres. There's an increase to 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres for parcels that abut and take access from a county-maintained road. But whenever there's a new subdivision, a new platted subdivision, they're regulated to that 10-acre requirement. So until we get a more dense future land use designation out there, they won't be able to further divide. Now, we would have to do a little more research on whether or not a family density exception could be looked at. I know we've done family density exceptions for other platted type 1 subdivisions, like in Interlochen Lake Estates, where they have larger lots. So it is something that could occur, but we're not going to see, in any time in our future, like 20 lots out there on that piece of property.
I think the concern that what I'm hearing, and I'm going to try to phrase this properly, is, not in my backyard type situation, but some residents are already there, and they live on smaller acreage. And, here are people who have large tracts of land. And we're seeing this throughout the county, where people they don't want to do pecan trees anymore, pecan, however you want to pronounce it, and they don't want to do potato fields, and they don't want to, they're going to develop their property. And, it's concerning to the residents that are there. But in this case, 1 per 10 acres is a very minimal density that we're dealing with, and we can still maintain our rural nature of life at 1 to 10. So I think this is kind of the best of the world that we can get. Now, would we be able to protect everybody against every subdivision that wants to come in? Probably not. And those subdivisions that want to come in will have to build up infrastructure and stuff. But in this, in the ag zoning, I'm good with 1 to 10. I'm good with the minimal impact on the community that we're going to have. So, thank you.
Mr. Adams,
I guess the only question I had is you had said something about the board could waive something about drainage. I just never heard that before. What does that entail? My only concern, I guess, is because I hear from a lot of citizens in my district who had done splits and things like that in the past, and then they complain that they have drainage issues, so I don't know if maybe someone waived it when they did it, but how does that apply to the lot, each lot specifically, and the drainage? If we did waive it, what would that preclude them from having to do?
Yes, sir. So paraphrasing from the Land Development Code, it's a very specific parenthesis subsection of one of the codes that we have, and it essentially states that if there's no internal improvements proposed for the subdivision, the Board of County Commissioners can review it and approve it as a preliminary and a final plat, and then waive those drainage requirements. So whenever you have a road that cuts through, suppose you have a 100-lot subdivision, you've got a lot of roads there, you obviously need a lot of drainage to make up for that paving and everything. So you'd see it in the way of swales, retention ponds, something along those lines. But in this case, because all of the proposed lots for the Kickin' It Ranch subdivision are taking access from Price Road, Price Road's right-of-way has a swale cut into it that will be able to accommodate the drainage. Now, if you choose to require swales on the property lines of those proposed lots, you can do that as a board. But staff is of the opinion that because it's flood zone A, it's a very draining type of soil that's there, drainage probably isn't going to be a huge concern for those folks.
Thank you. I just never heard that. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Okay, thank you. If there's no further questions, is there anybody in the audience today that would like to speak in favor of this? In opposition, please come forward. Would you state your name and address for the record, please, sir?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Excuse my voice, laryngitis. Irvin Weldon, 137 Perry Road, Hawthorne, Florida. I have two concerns pertaining to this particular development as such, and one is what you're talking about pertaining to
don't know whether it comes before us today to say you can have your gun range in perpetuity out there next door as long as you keep it legal on your land. I don't see where there would be a problem on our end, but as far as drainage goes, if you're on the east side, these 3 lots are gonna be up on of 30 acres, they're gonna be up on the extreme northwest corner, just about as far away from you as they could possibly get. So, you know, at least they're not asking for a density exception where they're gonna try to put 30 places on their 10 acres or what, I mean, their 30 acres, they're asking for 3 lots on 30 acres. That's just about the least intense you're probably gonna get out there if somebody wants to do something. Family lot splits.
I just was a concern about it.
I
just to say
understand.
it's on the
You're more than
record.
welcome here. Yes, sir.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir, for coming. Is there anybody else today that would like to speak in opposition to this case? Seeing none, the chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to go ahead and recommend staff's approval of the Kicking It Ranch subdivision. It's consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of Putnam County Comprehensive Plan, incompatible with surrounding zoning and uses, and consistent with the requirements of the Putnam County Land Development Code.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Okay, we have a motion to approve the staff's recommendation. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Motion passes unanimously. And yes, at this point, we're going to take a 3-minute and 27-second break.
your patience. And we're going to move into public comment on agenda items. These are public comment on the consent agenda items. So for you gentlemen that are here on the MSBU discussion or whatever, I'm going to allow you to talk during that discussion on new business where it will be relevant to what you want to say. But you're more than welcome to talk now or then, whichever. So is there any public comment on consent agenda items? Okay, seeing none, we're going to close public comment on consent agenda. And I'm going to ask on the consent agenda, is there any items that the commissioner wish to pull? Commissioner Pickens?
Don't wish to pull unless I have to, but I have some comments on C, D, E, and F. If I need to pull them and make those comments, I will. If not, I'll make them afterwards. Okay.
Well, that's up to you, sir.
Yeah, I'll pull them.
Okay. C, D, E, and F?
Yeah. Excuse me. And G.
Okay, Commissioner Wilkinson?
J, I have a question on J.
J. Commissioner Adams-Ack?
B and K.
B and K. If somebody had picked the last couple, we'll just go down the list. Let's see, Commissioner Harvey.
I have none.
I have none additional.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve consent agenda items A, H, I, and L.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Okay, so we're going to start with Commissioner Pickens on C, D, E, F, and G.
Okay, as you see, these items are presented before us to move these awards forward. And as chairman of the AHAC committee, I can say that over the last 2 years, we have done our best to work to move the LHAP forward and get caught up, I guess, with administrating the SHIP monies. And I just want to thank staff, Julianne and Administrator Suggs, and also on the clerk side, Ms. Cindy Trent, for their efforts, and also Antonio Jenkins from the Guardian Corporation, who is our agent that we're working with. We have been behind the 8 ball for the last few years, and we're finally catching up, and we're able to, at this particular point when we modified the LHAP agreement, is that we're able to raise the amounts that we can distribute to qualified individuals, as you see, for home renovation from $40,000 to $50,000. And in this day and age of costs, that will be a big help to these individuals. So we're moving forward 5 today, and we should see probably 6 more in the next few months. So that will probably wind up that particular years of money, if I explain it properly, and then we'll be ready to receive the monies for the next couple of years, which will be more than what we've been receiving in the past. We've only got about $350,000, and we should get about twice that. So the program is moving forward, and I want to thank each commissioner for the nominations to the AHAC committee, because we've had a quorum the last 2 meetings. We meet every quarter. And we really have a good board this time, and I'm looking for good things out of that. So I just wanted to mention that. It looks like we're finally catching up, but I want to give kudos to the staff, our board, and on the clerk side. And I see Logan Becker out there. I know that she's been involved in this too, and thank you, because it's really been a team effort to move this program forward, and I think we finally have it on track. Thank you. And with that, if there's any questions. Okay.
We have a comment. Commissioner Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and then I'll yield the floor back to Commissioner Pickens. He's a very kind man, Commissioner Pickens is, and he gave all the kudos to where they need to go. But, you know, it's due that he is commended for the work that he's done on this committee. I don't think I would have been able to handle this committee as good as he did. And I had some ideas back when we were going through the problems that we were going through, was just redo it and be done and let's move on. But Commissioner Pickens hung in there, and he hung in there with the greatest of graciousness that a man could have, worked this out, and I was excited to see that we had 5 of these applications. We haven't seen any in a long time. So Commissioner Pickens, I know you gave kudos to everybody else, but I want to say to you, thank you for your hard work and dedication to this committee, because this money helps the citizens of Putnam County, and it's an honor to serve with you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Will somebody please make a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve agenda items C, D, E, C, D, E, F, and G.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, ayes have it, motion carries unanimously. Next, we'll go to item J. Commissioner Wilkinson.
I just had a question on the last item on the list on page 224. This is DES, and then in description, it says lofted barn and donated. So can you tell me what it was, what we had used it for, and who we are donating it to?
Yes, ma'am. It was originally purchased by the volunteer fire department in East Palaca, and that department dissolved. They sold or donated their building to Feed the Need. That barn, because we became the asset holder of all assets. The pole barn, if you want, or shed, or however you want to call it, just the ownership needs to be transferred over to the legal property owner. It is not structurally sound enough to move and reuse, so it just needs to stay with the property.
Okay, well, thank you for that.
Yes, ma'am.
So since I'm on Feed the Need, then we're going to call that to.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of item J.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, ayes have it, motion carries unanimously. Okay. Next, we're going to go to item B, Commissioner Adams Act.
Yeah, so item B, I guess my one question is, one of the vehicles is for commissioner use. I've been here over 2 years. I've seen no use for the vehicle. I don't know that the commissioners need to have a vehicle, in my opinion, so it just seems like $40,000 spent for something that, at least I'm not aware of any use. I don't know if other commissioners use it very regularly. The other one I'm all for. And then my other question is around the trade-in value, just maybe at $3,000 for 2 vehicles that aren't super old, especially given the used car market these days. May it be better to surplus those and see what happens in the auction? I don't think we're going to do any worse than $1,500 per vehicle, but maybe we get close and maybe get a little more. So those are my 2 things on that. So I'm just looking for the other commissioners' thoughts on the usage of that vehicle. If other commissioners are using it, I guess if the 4 of you are using it regularly, I think maybe it makes sense. I don't see any situation where I would ever do it.
I understand I don't use it, I never have before, but it's available for a commissioner to use to drive for official county business to a certain area. And it's also available for staff to use too, but there's one that staff uses on a frequent basis, almost daily, that they use for different staff members use to go around for inventory or whatever. It's more of a, instead of calling it a commissioner vehicle, it's more of an administrative vehicle. I think there is a necessity to do it because the one we have right now is so bad that the deputy director, and I'm not trying to put words in her mouth, but the deputy director feels real bad about putting something in it from a safety standpoint. So, you know, these 2 vehicles were ready, and I'm for purchasing them because the 2 we have now are pretty bad. So, it's not just for commissioners to drive around. Commissioner Harvey.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve item B.
A motion and a second to approve item B. Is there any further discussion?
Yes. I do agree with Commissioner Adams' act regarding the trade-in value. I don't know. I know it's a easier process for us to do the trade-in, but I do feel like we could get more on surplusing them.
Does that change the deal at all with them if we just surplus the 2 vehicles and just buy the other 2?
No, we would just take the additional $3,000 out of general fund reserves to make up the difference in the trade. Doesn't make a difference. Both vehicles have significant issues that an obligation to disclose on the auction, so it may impact the ability to get any additional dollars. But we can try it either way. There is no easier process for staff. They're both the same.
With that being said, it doesn't matter to me. I didn't realize the issues that were involved.
I'd like to see a surplus.
Pardon me?
I just paid $5,000 for 2009, one of them. I think there is definitely some value.
You're more than welcome to offer an amendment to the motion. If it draws a second, we'll vote on it.
We could amend it to surplus the 2 instead of trading them in. That'd be great.
Okay, we have a motion to surplus. Is there an amendment to surplus? Do we have a second? Okay, we have a motion to we have an amendment to surplus and a second. Is there any further discussion on the amendment? All in favor say aye. Opposed? Okay, the amendment was voted down. So we have a motion on the floor, and the motion is to approve item B as presented. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
We have a 3-2 to approve the item B. Okay, item K.
Item K, we all know the story. I just don't feel expanding our sewer system at this time makes sense, and I understand that it's a time extension of something that we've already approved in the past, which I voted no for it in the past, and I'll continue to vote no for it until I see it going in a way that I'm not just going to get into all of it, but I'm just not for it.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve item K.
Motion for item K, is there a second?
I'll second.
Have a motion for item K and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Ayes have it, motion carries 4-1. Okay, so we're going to move into new business. And the first item in new business is the administration 2023 first quarter budget report. Ms. Young.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chairman. The data that's been presented to you is a report based on the data in the AS400 as of January 1st. So as you know, our first quarter is October, November, December. As we talked last year, this was the first year we began doing some quarterly budget reports. So when we talked trends last year, we didn't have a trend because trend requires a few times of doing it. Also, I would caution to remind you that we are not cyclical, meaning we don't have an even distribution of revenues or expenses throughout the year. So I do not ever expect to see in month 1/12 of the revenue and 1/12 of the expenditures spent. We typically draw most of our revenues in the beginning, thanks to Linda Myers and her office, who does a wonderful job of encouraging those prepayments. And then we typically spend in anomalies as far as when operational expenses go out, capital dollars, those things. Those are your one-time big dollars. For your operational revenues and expenses, we trended very close to where we were last year. Revenues were up 0.5%, so yay, but again, not a trend that I would tell you need to bank on, that you're going to suddenly collect more revenue this year because you're trending a little higher. You're not trending much higher at all. For expenditures, the same for your operational expenditures. We're trending very close to where we were last year, and both are in line with where I expect us to be after the first quarter. So just a basic overview. For revenues in the general fund, we've collected 51% of what we've budgeted. Expenditures in the general fund, we've spent 25.3. Again, you'll see grants is an anomaly there, throwing that number off over the 0.2%, if you will, because traditionally, if you're going to have a straight percent, you'd be at 25%. So again, that's an upfront payout, just the way it typically happens, grants and aids. The Transportation fund, revenues are trending at about 10.9%. Last year at this time, they were trending at 11%. So again, not a material difference. The expenditure trending at 14.7%. Last year, they were trending at 15%. Again, not a material difference. The one category, capital outlay, that you're seeing as 70% spend is on the capitalized software. It just means we get our annual payment for the year. Now you're going to see that same trend continue. You're not going to overspend, I guess, as you can't multiply it out by 3/4. In the fire fund, revenues collected are 54%. Last year we were at 44%. So again, we are trending a little bit higher in our initial revenue collections. Does not mean we're going to end the year collecting more money. It just means more people have paid up front. We saw the same thing in ad valorem. Fire fund expense, you're trending at 16%. Last year you were at 22%, but again, we had an anomaly of capital last year. So careful about telling, I try to be very cautious about telling you guys where we were last year versus this year, because I want you to understand there are anomalies that are going to throw us off from those numbers. The sanitation fund is trending revenue collected at 12.2%. Last year was at 13%. And expenditures are ending at 4.8%. So overall, they are down. But again, something throwing this number off is that you've got a 0.5% in your other financing uses, and that's the category that captures your reserve balance. And so obviously you're going to spend that reserve balance through the end of the year. The Water Utility East Putnam Fund, 405, is trending at 7.7% revenue collection. Last year at this time, we were at 5%, so revenues are up a little bit in the collections. And we are trending at 8.6% overall when you factor in capital outlay and other financing sources. But without those, you're really very close to the 22%, which is where we were last year. That's a high-level overview of quarter one's funds, or your operational funds, and I'm happy to dissect these further with any commissioner or staff that may have additional questions, or citizen.
If commissioners have any questions, you just want to give them Ms. Young. Okay. All right, so in that case, we'll move on to, pardon me? I'm sorry, I missed it. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, so during our budget process last year, we talked about the potential for starting discussions and lowering ad valorem for next year, and said that this would be the time frame that we would have those discussions. So I guess I want to bring that up, is how are we planning to, as a commission, this is our one opportunity, that was our planned opportunity to speak about it. I know, Mr. Turner, you seemed like you were for it as well at the time. How are we looking as far as working with staff? I'd like to start that conversation to adjust the ad valorem down. Or in this case, and I don't think it's going to happen, I think the good news, not only going up 0.5%, which is a slowdown from last year, is I think we have some new housing starts that have happened over the last couple of years that are going to help float us through this pseudo recession that we have. So that's the good news. But I guess as a commission, how do we want to start that conversation that we said we were going to delay until we started having these budget meetings or budget reports and updates? And I'd like to see us start that conversation on driving our ad valorem down from the 9.x, because I think next year and the year after, if we don't see the housing starts stay the same, which from the permits it looks like it's going to be good, when you go over to that office, they're way behind the whole time. So it's good news in a way. And getting ad valorem down from the 9.x that it is now to a lower rate.
Well, just for the record, you're absolutely correct. I am on board with you on that one. And in my opinion, before we can discuss how much we're going to reduce, we have to know how much we're going to get. And that's not going to be until the first week in July. And so that's when they're going to start formulating budget on revenues or what have you, and that's when the board has to make the decision on what part of, if any, of the rollback that they're going to accept in order to make the budget balance or trim the budget to make the rollback work. So until that number gets here, which is usually, I think, the first week in July, my memory serves me correctly, then we'll know how much projected revenue we're going to have for the year. Yes, Commissioner.
So I guess this conversation happened at the time that we had the projected revenue, and it was tabled because, well, we're just not ready to do it this year, or whatever reasons, and we need to plan for it throughout the year.
That's not
To
correct.
make adjustments. It's, well, I'll
Not
go watch
accurate
it.
at all.
I'll go watch it again. That was my take from the conversation. My impression of it was we needed to plan towards that, and so I was just looking forward to planning towards it, but I guess if no other commissioners up for planning for it.
I totally agree with you on most of what you said, but that's not an accurate statement. The statement was that when we were approving the final rate last year is when you wanted to take the rollback. After we had already made the constitutional agreements, after we'd already agreed to budgets, we had agreed to raises for the employees, we had agreed to all these things, and then at the last minute, wanted to take the rollback. Can't do that because you have already spent the money. So this year, the idea is if we want to take a rollback on the rates, we have to start up front and build that rollback in. So that'll be the first decision. Last year, the first decision we made was to give the employees a substantial rate to try to keep the employees working for Putnam County. Then we had to figure out a way to cover that we had already voted on, and that did not leave any money back from the additional revenues that were gained from taxing, from property revenue increases last year. So I do want to go after some of the rollback this year, absolutely do. But in order to do that, that's when we've got to start. The first decision made before we start talking to the constitutionals about their percentages, about anything else, the first decision made is how much additional revenues there's going to be, because the commission has the opportunity to make that decision on we are going to take all, part, none, whatever of the rollback, the additional revenues, and then move forward off that budget number. Then the constitutionals know how much they're getting. Everybody knows how much they're getting as soon as the decision is made by the board on that one issue. And until we have an idea how much that money is or how much increase there's going to be, that decision just can't be made. Did you have something else to add?
Absolutely. This commissioner absolutely presented the numbers for what I thought the rollback should look like in June, July meetings, for every budget meeting up until September. And it didn't get traction until the last meeting. So it wasn't a conversation that waited till the last minute. It was a conversation that was had at the initial budget hearing with the Constitution. It was a conversation that I also outlined. And I outlined not only if we went back 4 different options I have in percentages that we could have rolled back, and I spent about 3 to 4 minutes talking about it during that meeting, and that was way before September. So I just want to say that, and that we didn't do it then, and I look forward to us doing it this July then, and hopefully that actually happens for the citizens. Thank you.
Commissioner Harvey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I think this commissioner, I'm constantly talking budgets with our staff, and I think we really got to trust our staff. But there's some anomalies out there too that I had a case this week that I shared with some of our staff members. There's a home not far from me valued at over $150,000, paid no ad valorem taxes due to all the exemptions that the voters have voted in. Now, we've got to be careful about jumping off and doing things. We talk here about making sure our employees are taken care of, and this commissioner wants that, and making sure that our first responders are taken care of, and this commissioner wants that. And our law enforcement officers, we've got a big responsibility to do, but I would encourage every commissioner, if you want to start having that conversation, sit down with staff and do it. Do it now, as I do, and start talking about what this could look like, and finding out what they hear from our staff members of what the needs are to keep our employees here. The worst thing we do is train them and send them off. So it's a very delicate balance of monies that we deal with, and all of us would love to roll back rates. There's no doubt about that, but not on the backs of our employees, and not on the backs of our first responders, and definitely not on the backs of our law enforcement officers. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
But in addition to that, last year, the first vote that was taken by the board as far as the budget was to raise raise salaries around here substantially. And so if that doesn't happen with the wave of a stick. It happens by taking the money from the increase in the revenues and using it towards what we voted to do, which was an increase in the cost of the wage increase. So you can't do both. You can't vote to raise your expenses and then vote to drop your revenues. You'll run into a brick wall. I mean, anybody that even balances their checkbook at the end of the month should understand that. So anyhow, like I said, we'll bring up this discussion in July, and hopefully we can get there with it. Commissioner Adams, do you have something else to add, sir? Okay.
My presentation included the data for giving the raises that we projected. It was purposeful for when the timing was. Thank you.
I think you're going to find in this situation, I don't care who gets the credit. I just hope we can do something good for the county. So with that, we're going to move on to item B. Who's taking that?
What would you like to know? So our current our current policy says all employees should have a physical before employment, and we found that it's basically the absolute minimum unless you're a first responder or with emergency services. Employees such as myself or a clerk in permitting, it's basically a vision test, a hearing test, reflexes, and they listen to your lungs and say you're good to go. So it's basically by eliminating this and having a self-disclosure form that a candidate would fill out after an offer has been made. It can expedite the hiring process and save us money at the same time, because that type of physical really does not give an indication if the person's going to be able to perform the duties.
Good deal. Anybody have any questions? Okay, Commissioner Adams, aye.
I'm absolutely against the questionnaire that asks people personal stuff about their health and other things. That's just me. I wouldn't answer at my employer. I never will for any employer. I think it violates HIPAA. I think it violates the spirit of HIPAA. Obviously, someone agreed to fill it out. It's their choice. But for a requirement for employment, I think it's ridiculous, and I'm against it wholeheartedly.
As far as Rich, have you looked at this yet to see if it violates anything?
Because they're volunteering the information.
The information collected is kept in a confidential medical file that an employee has. It's not subject to public records request unless it's there.
And what's the purpose of the information?
The purpose of it is to identify something as simple as allergies, to know what our employees should be looking out for. You know, should we not have peanuts in the break room? Something like that, but also to identify emergency contacts, if there's any accommodations that we should extend to a new employee.
So if someone fills out this form, they say I'm allergic to peanuts. It's confidential. How does anyone know that they're allergic to peanuts? I don't understand how you make that bridge.
With signage and, break rooms or common areas, things like that, which is not uncommon at all.
I get it. I'm just telling you, I personally am against this type of thing.
I appreciate your opinion.
And other citizens are as well.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval.
Have a motion, do we have a second? Have a motion and a second, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Ayes have it, motion carries 4-1. Thank you, Ms. Colon. Item C is the Georgetown Park. I guess we're gonna have an update on that.
Yes, sir, and in your packets was included in the packets the reports that were produced by our students that we engaged through UFIFAS, the master's level studies students. If you'll remember back to when we engaged them, we have a management plan for this park, which was part of how we acquired the park. It requires 14 different objectives that all have a ranking and a score to be met. We have been out of compliance. We have met some of them, and then we have some still remaining to be met, and needed some additional expertise on best path to get us there. If you'll remember back, we also had Mr. Jordan give us an unofficial wetland designation survey. So we do know we have some wetlands on the property. And so when we engaged these students, they were able to take site surveys with their expertise. They walked the property, they took samples of plants, photos only, they did not remove plants. They have to make sure I designate that. They looked at studies and where streams would flow or water levels or land levels. And what they've come up with is a master plan to incorporate the aspects of the management plan with the least amount of impacts to any wetlands and to preserve and enhance other areas that would be to restore them to nature, the native plant life that's there, and also guide us in removing any invasive species, which again is part of our comprehensive plan. From there, staff and Commissioner Pickens met with the water management to review the plan. One of the main concerns has been, do we have so much wetlands that we have concerns about being able to put a boat ramp there, because that is an aspect and the highest scoring aspect of the management plan. And so we met with the water management plan, very preliminary, had a very encouraging meeting. They obviously can't put anything in writing or give us anything until we apply for an actual permit, which is going to require engineered plans, which brings us to where we are today. Staff is seeking direction or approval from the BOCC to reach out to some of our continuing services engineer designers and to get some engineered plans that would get us to a point where we can get a cost, an engineer's estimate of cost on the parking and the boat ramp, as we believe that's going to be the most costly items that we've got. And that would allow us to work with water management to get a finite decision on how much disturbance of the wetlands or how much restorative work that we would be required to do in order to accommodate the boat ramp.
Okay, so basically at this point, before we spend money on this, don't we have to give a tentative plan to the people who we're trying to comply with in order to get their permission? Because if we spend all the money on design and what have you, and they won't let us use that as part of our compliance from, is it DEO or who gave us the money?
FCTC, Florida Communities Trust Commission.
Okay, so with them, don't we have to get their approval that they will accept part of this, or just move forward and not worry about it?
So two things can happen. We certainly can reach out to them. We reach out to them every quarter. We're required to. But this plan accommodates all 14 aspects of the management plan. What we originally were fearful of is that we had so much disturbance of wetlands that we were going to need to modify the plan. That's where we had approval before we move forward. We would certainly be in communication with them, but after meeting with the water management and seeing the design that the students were able to come up with, we have far lessened the impact on the wetlands and discussed with the water management ways that we can even lessen them further, i.e. boardwalks can be on stilts, which makes not a total, impact to that wetland.
Okay, I guess, so the next step is get design.
Correct.
And where we're gonna pay for the design from, because for the portions that are for the boat ramp and parking relative to the boat ramp, then I would like to use some fund money to fund that portion of it if we could. But if there's other parts of the park and rec that don't have anything to do with the boat ramp or parking for the boat ramp that are gonna be incorporated in this, then that portion of it needs to be paid from for somewhere else. Because I don't think we should spend our fishing fund money to put a jungle gym in up by the road, for lack of a better term. So
I get you. And the request today is only related to the boat ramp and the parking area for the boat ramp. It is not related to any of those other aspects.
do you have any idea of approximately how much money you're gonna need to get this done?
I don't. I did not want to engage an engineer or have those conversations until I had board approval to move forward.
Would you like a motion, or would you like a waive?
I'm good with either as long as the board in support of it.
Everybody agree that we can at least find out what it's, Commissioner Harvey, excuse me.
No, that's fine, that's fine. I want to thank staff on this. When I first got here, we had two of these albatrosses hanging on our neck. We got one off, and that was a great idea, don't get me wrong. but it was a really grand scheme idea that we couldn't afford to handle. So now we're looking at the South Putnam one, and Georgetown needs this in that area. There's no doubt about it. So I just really want to commend staff on your hard work. I also want to say go Gators, since UF was part of it. I know, Julianne, that really bothers you, but FSU didn't step up, UF did. So just want to point that out. And
If FSU had done it, we'd have had it 6 months ago.
oh, okay, we'd already been done. That's fine. I'm sure of that. But no, I just really want to say, you know, UF and IFAS really helps us out in every county statewide. And there's not a thing that they don't put their fingers on that doesn't help local government. So I just want to really say I appreciate that. Appreciate the hard work of getting to where we're at today. This commissioner is excited to move forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Commissioner Pickens.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Harvey. Yeah, I want to commend staff, Julianne, for reaching out to Sharon Train and IFAS, because this has moved us in a big step. So what this has done is taken the original conceptual plan and you the kind of the initial drawings on like the second page of what the whole scheme of things would look like. The professor and the landscape architect student really suggested that we probably go for the big thing first rather than the small things like the hiking trail. And not that they're small, they just would be easy to do, and maybe get that in first if feasible. So if you look at that, they came back to us at least twice, and we gave them suggestions. So on page 3, I guess you see the land and you see the actual parking that will be available if we can do this project, when we do this project, down by the boat ramp itself. So the first they brought to us, there were half as many parking spots. We said we got to have more. But what they've done is be able to fit this in, if you continue on, where it shows the wetlands in these different areas on page 251. And when we met with water management, with Alan Baggett and some of his staff, some of the scientists and engineers that would be looking at this, and going to the site, they were very pleased that we have already identified these areas to help to disturb the wetlands as least as possible. That makes a good statement. So we were already a little bit ahead of the game. But yeah, if we can move this one forward, try to get some type of estimate on what it would cost to do this, it would be big, because we do need this in South Putnam. And I think this board has been behind this the whole time. We have a number of boat ramps, but we don't have really any with parking, and this would take care of that for the South Putnam. So,
Mr. Chairman, I move this item forward.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Under discussion. One thing I'm concerned about is that we keep trying to draw a line here between the park amenities and the boat ramp stuff. So
I'm in agreement with that. There has been, we still have some BPP money.
Correct.
I want to say around $100,000.
150.
We have 150. I know we spent 50 on the playground equipment and everything a couple of years ago, which is there, and people do use that. So we have about 100,000 there that I am in agreement to separate what would be for the boat ramp itself, or even the boat ramp and the parking areas, and the other amenities would come from other monies. I agree with that 100%.
Thank you.
Okay, we will be taking this, since we do have approval here, kind of doing it not backwards, but we have to go to the Parks and Recs Committee and also the Fishing Fund Advisory Committee too.
Okay, I'm good. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, ayes have it. Motion carries unanimously. Okay, next we're going to go on to item D, which is the scrap and CIGP grant application recommendations. Has everybody looked at these so far? They were going to bring them last meeting and last month, and I wouldn't do it because I didn't think there had been enough communication between the commissioners and Public Works yet. And so, does anybody have any discussions they would like? We can do a full presentation. So does Commissioner Harvey. But you're more than welcome. Ladies first, so you go right ahead.
Thank you. On item number 3, reconstruction of Sun Garden Road, that's the area I live in, and I'm actually not in favor of putting this on the grant application. I think there's better ways to utilize funding these funds. We have to be
I understand it's state funds, but we have to be good stewards of not only our local money, but our state money and our federal money. That's why we got elected. And so, paving that road is a concern for me because there's very few people that live on it, and to me, it would just become a big drag strip, and we would have a lot of issues out there in that area. That road is good enough to use in the case of evacuation. It's not perfect. Certainly a paved road would be better, and I'm not against it happening. I just think that for now, that needs to be pushed back. And when you apply a cost-benefit analysis, you're not really getting the most bang for your buck, in my opinion. So it makes more sense for us to serve more citizens. So I would like to amend this and propose that we repair the wood pilings on the bridge on West River Road, which we've applied for grants. And speaking with Public Works, we've applied for grants for both the CBDG and the Hazardous Mitigation Grant Program, and that project has not been funded. So the number is bridge number 764033 on West River Road, also known as County Road 209, over the Mason Branch Waterway. And I'm proposing to change that from reconstruction of Sungard Road to what I just said. And basically, in my opinion, we don't want another emergency bridge repair like we had in Barton. And there's still wood pilings out on West River Road that need repaired, and that bridge improved, and I think that serves more citizens in our community than Sungard would.
That's exactly the reason why I wanted to start this process today. We were going to start it at the last meeting, but we had sent out emails hoping that commissioners would have these kind of comments, but it's fine to do it today's meeting, no problem. Because I also agree that Curry Road doesn't necessarily need to be constructed either. Like 3 mailboxes on the road all the way from one to the other. I mean, they want it to be part of the bike path, okay, that's fine. But if we could take that same stop or scrap money and use it somewhere that's a lot more necessary on a collector or a thoroughfare road than a throughfare road, then it would be a lot better than trying to do a road that hardly anybody uses. They can basically drive 600 yards up the road and stay on pavement and drive around. So I mean, it's not like even at Sungarden where they got to drive all the way out to the county line to come across. It's right there. I mean, so I was hoping, we're going to go ahead and make comments here from everybody, but I was hoping that this would start the discussion, and that we could actually get some solid recommendations and talk about this at the next meeting. We have time, Mike, to talk. Yes. Scott? Well, see, that aggravates me. It really does. And the reason why is because we started this project. We were going to talk about it 2 weeks ago, and we basically said none of these projects we want done. So get with the commissioners and try to find out from them what they actually want to be done, what project do they want to be done. And it comes back today with the same 4 recommendations on it as was before, when I know personally I was one of them that said, I don't want that one done. It makes no sense. If we're going to get one SCOP or scrap grant for that area, let's use it on something we really need instead of just finding something to do with it.
Well, I'm good with the number 1, with widening and resurfacing of Barton Road, because that definitely needs to be done. It's a bad road and it needs to be done. So I'm good with that one. My only concern was number 3.
Well, I'm not offended that they're going to do Curry Road either. I'm just saying that I think that we maybe could have done some more. I don't see any in South Putnam at all. So anyhow, Commissioner Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with number 1, too. I think Barton Road does need to be widened and resurfaced. I do have a problem with number 3. Years ago, when I first got here, there was some talk about partnering with Clay County. Everybody that we kind of had working for us then doesn't remember. They're not here anymore to remember the conversation. But it's not going to benefit us a bit, so I think we should wait on number 3. And number 2, I want to bring up something there. The reconstruction of Orange Springs Cutoff Road, if you don't know where that's at the Deer Farm out on 315 almost to Marion County line. It's a little cutoff through there with a little bridge. Hardly anybody lives there. And GPS is taking you through that area because that's the shortest route. over to 21. But the route to really be taken is to go up to Orange Springs and turn right there at the Dollar General and go down, well, every community has a Dollar General now. And Barton will get one soon, I'm sure. So, but then you turn right and you're on 21. I don't think the residents out there, from my understanding and talking with some of them, they don't want this traffic through their area. They would actually like signs, no through traffic, local traffic only, because it's really not designed to bring people through that area to do that. So that's my understanding. So I think in this commissioner, I like item 1. I wish we had time to talk about other ones, but I don't think item 2 and 3 meet up to the criteria of asking the state to help us with that.
Commissioner Pickens?
Yeah, Mike, I guess he's here. I mean, I know we discussed, I guess we discuss this each year, what we're going to put on there. Is that correct? So Union Camp Road was on there last year, and the year before, and the year before, and didn't gain any traction. So I said, you know, I don't mind pulling that off of there if there's something that's more viable that would help the county. You know, it can be in South Putnam, it can be somewhere else. So I guess this is the list?
Yes, that's correct.
Well, I've had really no communication with anybody from Public Works other than maybe JR. So I'll throw that on me. I guess I guess this is just a commissioner wish list rather than input from Public Works of what may qualify. I mean, is that a fair question? Do y'all look at different roads in different areas, whether they're dirt, resurfaced, whatever that would qualify, and maybe have the points needed to get a grant?
Those are factors that are taken into consideration. We review the needs that we've identified. We bring the list to the commission, and if there's variances that want to be made to that list, that's what we proceed forward with. We have 4 submissions we can make with this round of funding, and these are the 4 that we're presenting to the board.
And that's all I got for this right now.
You like to take one of the 2 that these 2 commissioners have said they don't want on there and put Union Camp back on?
I don't know if I want to put Union Camp on there. Can we put a resurfacing? Put resurface 308?
Yes, sir. Good.
I don't know off the top of my head where 308 is in the resurfacing plan. I just don't know, but yeah, I'd like to add that, resurfacing 308, if that's okay with the commissioners, if there's an open spot.
You got 4 of them. It sounds to me like everybody only really likes the first one. So,
I'll speak. I don't know enough about those other ones, to be honest with you. I'm sorry about that. I'd go with the commissioners in that particular district, but if there's an open slot, I'd like to throw County Road 308 from County Road 309 to 17.
sounds like if anybody has any big problem, there's going to be spot for number 3. Commissioner, you done tonight?
Yes.
Mr. Adams, that?
Yeah, and when I looked at this, the only reason why Sun Garden Road stood out was because at the time that the bridge was out, everyone was screaming about Sun Garden Road. But I agree, now that we have a bridge that's kind of brand new, the odds of needing to have that, unless there's a true absolute catastrophe that something happens to that bridge again, are probably pretty slim in our lifetime. So I can see taking that one off. I would like, in part of the conversation I had with Public Works on Barton Road was, I was hoping that it went out to the 100 intersection. So possibly, and I don't know if it could even be done through Scop and Scrap, but that intersection at 100 in Barton, if we could find a way to make that turn wider so you can see, there's a lot of accidents that happen there at 100 in Barton where it comes down and there's been several deaths there too in the last couple of years. So from a public safety point of view, as well as a traffic management point of view, my understanding is the state has refused to put a stoplight at that intersection when we've requested in the past, maybe having a wider turn lane. They may not be possibly going to have own enough right away to do it, but if that's something maybe not this year for Scrap, maybe in future years, because that was, when I had that area of the district, that was a huge concern, was turning on and off onto 100 from that area. As far as Orange Springs Cutoff Road, I didn't request this to be here, but we've had several conversations on that road, being basically with JR when he was in his prior role, and basically as it being a time saver for basically fire EMS to get to the Star Lake community, to get to that 21 community to come down. And that's our main cutover. And if you go, I drive that regularly, and I do the cutoff sometimes. And depending on which vehicle I have, I won't take my big van on the Woodbridge, but I'll take my little truck and my car on the little bridge. And I go up to, up to Orange Springs and come back down regularly. I mean, it's right near my house. And that was the whole purpose, the idea that I understood it, and even it's documented in here, was for emergency services to have access. I have no problem if we paved it, still putting a no through traffic sign on it. But for emergency services perspective, I think that is our key access. Because you see, not knowing yet where we're going to put the new fire station. I think that's our key access. Station 20 can't get there quick enough. I'm hoping we're going to alleviate some of that in future dirt to pave with Old Hawthorne Road, which is on my dirt to pave list. I'm going over towards Gordon Chapel. I think that's the right rating. Going towards Gordon Chapel. If we pave that, that's going to alleviate a little bit of that. But that would add, if the fire service had to go all the way up to Orange Springs and come back, I think that adds about 8 minutes to the trip, which that could be life or death. So that's why I support that. I absolutely support keeping Orange Springs Cutoff Road on. If we put signs saying no through traffic after we do it, I'm fine with that as well. And absolutely GPS takes you through there. I mean, I did a trip to go to the Sanford Airport, and from my house it took me down Orange Springs Cutoff Road. And if you didn't know the road, you might be scared out of your mind the first time you come down that little hill and see that bridge. I know it's safe for my vehicles, but I can see where that's concerned. And does that include the bridge as far as doing a culvert or something over the bridge? Because that's a different conversation we've had as a board and individually, is changing that from a bridge to a large culvert leading in and coming out.
That's not part of this application.
Okay. So it would be paved to the Woodbridge and both sides and nothing with the bridge?
Potentially, yes. I'd have to look back at the map of where that terminates at.
It's the Woodbridge in the middle of the woods.
No, I don't think the design's been made yet, so we're arbitrarily talking about stuff we're not controlling at this point. So if we could get back on task here.
So I'm just saying I support number 2.
You support number 2?
Absolutely.
Okay.
For those reasons.
So clearly most people don't support number 3. And Commissioner, do you have any, I'm trying to do this association style, if that's all right. We can't do it anywhere other than this room. So does anybody have any problem with using number 3 from Mr. Pickens' is what, 308? 308. Resurface 308. Y'all have a problem with that?
I do not.
Okay. So if we don't have a problem with that, let's change number 3 from reconstructing Sun Garden Road to resurfacing Highway 308. I guess we can leave Orange Springs in there.
Can I make one statement? And let me ask if this would be possible. The only alternative to Orange Springs Cutoff that would be valid for the same purposes of EMS would be, what's the lake road out there? The name's slipping my mind, that we've already paved. We haven't connected. Lake Susan. If we could swap to finish Lake Susan, I think that would be viable and still under the same confines of public safety to get out to that community. Because that absolutely, vehicles are still getting stuck out on Lake Susan Road when it rains hard, box trucks. Is that a viable one? I mean,
substitute number 2 for finishing Lake Susan?
Yeah, I think that would be a priority over Orange Spring Cutoff.
Mr. Pickens, you have a problem with that?
I don't have a problem with that.
Okay, so we're going to take number 2 and we're going to put Lake Susan, finishing Lake Susan Road in there. We're going to take number 3 and use it for resurfacing of 308.
And would number 4 be the wood pilings mitigation?
Bridge repair would be best, yes, but in that area is fine with me. Yeah, bridge repair. I mean, I'm sure that, can't you go identify not just that one, but we got some on West River Road never been fixed out there, and I'm telling you right now, they were identified as fault 5 years ago, and they were scalding badly, and there were wood pilings, but they were scalding badly, and so if that ends happening, we're going to end up having another one of them $4 million repairs instead of a $400,000 repair where we could have went in there and just sleeved it.
I think that's the one that we're referring to.
That's the one we're referring to.
That's
Yes,
correct.
That's the one with the unknown pilings.
Yes, that's the one
We know the wood
I would
embedded
like
in
to
this
see
unknown.
done. And look at, I think there's another one out in that area too, in the Bostwick area. So if you would look out in there and see if maybe if we're gonna do a copper scrap grant, see if we couldn't do those two under one grant, or
That'd be good.
and fix both of them at one
Two
time.
bridges under number 4 possibly?
Yeah, on the same road.
And I want to ask a very dear favor. Would you please, if this turns out that we'll get one of these this year, would you bring it back to the board and let's fund the damn thing before the road falls down on somebody's head?
Absolutely.
Please? I mean, really, sometimes we drag around just a little bit too long, hoping that somebody else will pay for our problem. This is one here we've known about for at least 4 years. So, all right, so we squared on what we're gonna do. Number 4 is gonna be the bridge repair out on the West River Road area.
Yeah, for clarity, I'll go through it one more time. Number 1 is as is, widening and resurfacing Borden Road. Number 2 is Lake Susan. Number 3.
But we're gonna add to number 1 also intersection upgrade.
Okay, intersection of 100. Number 2 will be Lake Susan. Number 3 will be resurfacing the 308. Number 4 will be the bridge repairs of West River Road.
Okay, before we move on from this subject, I want to listen to, Mr. Hoteling would like to comment on this issue. And because this is new business, we're trying out the deal where you can talk on the issue as it comes. If it doesn't get out of hand, that's what we're going to try to do.
Yes, sir. Tim Hoteling, 105 Riverside Way, San Mateo. Pardon me, I didn't get advance information, or I would have said something on Curry Road paving. I've attended years now the Blue Ways and Trails Committee and listened to some really, really active people that have worked really, really hard to get the biking and trails from sea to shining sea and from down south and up. I live in that area, as you know, and I've watched people out walking dogs, people with walkers, for crying out loud, and bikers using those trails that are along Highway 17 through the Duns Creek Bridge area. That there are two basically bottlenecks for that through trail, which allows to get these guys that ride bicycles all over. They come and spend a lot of money and stay here and use those trails. That Curry Road area is one big impediment because the trail going north stops right there. They've had a lot of conversations with DOT in terms of just putting in the bike trail to make the connection to get up the old San Mateo Road, which is where their plan is to go across. It's really hazardous for bikes. If they put in just a bike trail, sure as heck people are going to be driving on it because it's one lane high, so the DOT doesn't want to do that. And I agree with you, there's not a lot of houses there, and for any other reason, it isn't worth, my personal opinion, there's other avenues that they could take to expand that, to make this grand plan that they've been working for 25 years on, to make it go together. I would just encourage you to get some input from those people that have worked so hard for this so that you can see the importance to them and to the county for locking in this tourist attraction for it's only a mile worth of paving before you make your final decision. I think you do well to gather more information, that's all.
I don't think we have time, Mr. Hoteling, but I'll tell you, they and I are at complete odds over that because they want the county to take funds, or at one time they wanted the county to take funds and pave Curry Road, where all they have to do is literally drive from here to the old Pizza Hut across the street or stay on pavement and drive around. So we don't agree on that fact that they should pave a mile of dirt road in order to keep them riding their bicycle an extra few hundred yards. So
I don't totally disagree with you, but I really think it's short-sighted and disrespectful not to get that in public
short-sighted not to do
information.
Curry Road instead of fixing the bridge that's about to fall down, and you call that short-sighted because you want the
I'm not here to
done.
argue with you.
I know, Judge. Thank you for coming today. Julianne?
I'd like to make a comment about that. Okay.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to add that we've got a meeting tomorrow with a separate agreement with DOT about addressing the intersection of 100 and Barton Road. Commissioner Wilkins is going to join us tomorrow because DOT's come to us with a plan for trying to do something at the intersection of Highway 100 and
That's
Barton Road.
usually a different pot of money too, because the intersections usually come out of the safety pot and it's not as big a long-term deal. So
Yes, sir. But tomorrow at 2 o'clock, Commissioner Wilkinson, Public Works, and myself are sitting down with a meeting with DOT.
Commissioner Adams-Act, did you have something?
I just want to say one thing on the Curry Road thing. I think we're all aware of the desire there, Tim. And with this particular pot of money, I couldn't justify it myself understanding where the needs are as far as public safety and bad roads to do that with this particular pot of money. That would be the only reason why. I disagree with you with this pot of money. I don't think we need to talk to trails people with it because this pot of money shouldn't be used for that, in my opinion. With all of the issues that we have with public, we have areas that we can't get ambulances to throughout the county, especially in my district, and in the part of my district that Ms. Wilkinson now has. There are several areas like that as well. Until those are solved with this particular money, I can't see getting there for trails. But I agree with you, it is a conversation that has to happen with the trails, and I hope we get that done at some point, but it would be a different pool of money after other priorities are taken care of.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. Well said. Commissioners, do you have anything else to add? Mike, you have the list now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that we're gonna try to, that's probably actually correct. That's probably a safety pot of money. It'd get done quicker and it's completely a different set of monies completely. That's what they use for the end of East End. It was already in design. Don't look for it to happen anytime soon though, because they had it designed 7 years ago and they finished it about 2 months ago, so don't look for it to happen tomorrow.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of the list as amended.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, ayes have it, motion carries unanimously. Okay, item E, which is the MSBU discussion on Melrose Landing. Are you guys here for Melrose or Violet? Both? Some of both? Okay, well, we'll take them in order then. Melrose Landing, we'll go ahead and get started on that. So it's my understanding today that this discussion on both of these are just whether or not to move them forward and send out the letters and do the things to see if the residents want it by the 50% plus one margin. Correct, is that correct?
May I have a moment?
Absolutely, sir.
Mr. Chairman, we have been working with Melrose Landing, Milton and I think probably over 2 years now. I have personally attended many meetings. And yes, you're correct, Mr. Chairman. This is no more than us just moving it forward to get the 50% plus one. And then we start going out. You know, this board made a very distinguished position here a few years back that we were not going to spend county money unless there was an absolute buy-in by the local community, if you will. And I think the next two MSBU proposed are absolutely bought in by the community. They want to go forward. This does not tie the board to anything because at the end of the day, we don't know really prices until we go out for bid. We won't know any of that. And it might not be feasible to go forward, but right now, before we spend taxpayer money, we have asked these petitions, the landowners, to come forward, and they have in good faith, and I believe that's all we need to do today, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, well, we're going to talk about Melrose Landing first, and basically, I've got a list of people here. I'm making sure that first that would like to speak today is Mr. Robert McGuire. Would you please try to hold your comments to 3 minutes if possible, sir?
Thank you very much. I'm Robert McGuire. I live at 144 Cessna Drive in Hawthorne. First of all, I want to thank Commissioner Harvey for helping to get the Melrose Landing MSBU project on the agenda today. Cessna Drive in particular has no base, and it's on a slope, so during each rainstorm, all the sand washes down the hill. That's the only material that's left on the street. Many delivery and personal vehicles over the years have been getting stuck on the street with cost to us personally to get these removed. More lots have been sold now in the area, and some complaints have yielded some fill being brought in to help with the increased traffic, but it's only a short-term solution, and the street needs really a permanent fix. That's all I have.
Okay. Perhaps I could change this conversation just a little. I'd be very surprised as chairman that this didn't move forward today for the petition phase to find out if we can get the required 50% plus one.
Yeah, we've already submitted the signatures for
Yes, sir, but it's got to have a full-blown petition sent out to the people from the county, a letter, and they've got to contact us back with 50% plus one in order for us to move forward. That's all what our ordinance says. So, so today we're just talking about whether we're going to move this over and send out the letters, not that you want to do it, I mean, or whatever. So I'll sit here as long as y'all want, listen to every one of you come up here and tell me you want your road paved, but what we're talking about today is sending this on to the next step in the process, which is basically asking for the landowners in the area to send a petition back saying that they're for the MSBU process. That's the next step. So
Thank you.
please understand, I'm not trying to cut you short. If you want to come up here and make your 3 minutes, I have no problem with it whatsoever. But that's all we're here for today, is to move it forward. And I'd be willing to bet at this time it's going to move forward, so you don't have to talk us into doing the next step, I don't believe.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, I'm going to say, does anyone else want to, I have cards here, but does any of you other guys want, you're more than welcome, sir. Please come up. Yes, sir, not a problem. What is your name, sir?
My name is Rock Ferrone. I'm at 116 Cessna Drive, Hawthorne. First I want to thank Commissioner Harvey for putting the time in and coming out. We really appreciate the effort. Also, I want to thank the whole board here for allowing the prayer before the meeting. Our county used to do that. They don't do it anymore. Hopefully you guys never get rid of that. Very impressive. I'm actually in the transition. I'm from Pennsylvania. I own that lot at 116 Cessna. And I get what you're saying. This is just a preliminary phase. You're going to move it forward. But I think I wanted to take a couple of minutes just to explain the importance of Melrose with the airstrip. We have homes there that are upwards of $500,000 to maybe $1 million. I'm sure Commissioner Harvey's seen them. A lot of those homes were built on a kind of sand road, and quite frankly, I'm surprised that a lot of people put that kind of money in that facility with those infrastructures. If the county would spend a little bit of funds there to increase those roads and infrastructure, the royalty and the benefit of the tax revenue base would be far outweigh the spending. Commissioner Harvey mentioned a diamond in the rough when we were talking about ports. That project, that place is a diamond in the rough, clearly, like your other airport, Pulaski Airport, diamond in the rough. Just as a quick note, and again, it's a little off subject, but in Pennsylvania, I worked closely with Governor Ridge, developing some opportunity zones. They were called Keystone Opportunity Zones to generate business. Governor Engler started it. He won a Pulitzer Award for economic opportunities for businesses. Governor Ridge picked up on it. Governor Ridge liked to use the airplane, the King Air. He flew to Michigan and realized that in Michigan, all of the sites, because they were a military base state, they did armament, bullets and stuff, that a lot of the sites of these Keystone zones were in airports. And all the airport sites went to the roof with the opportunity zone. So you folks have a huge opportunity. Intermodal with the port that you're working on. One of the companies I have, we do import-export. We're anxious to see what you do with that port. Would love to use that, and if we have to be of assistance to sign letters to say that we'll support it, get some of that, I don't know what you call it, but we use CDBG money and Pennsylvania and some transportation money, we help with that. But the airport is also a huge potential revenue base for you folks. And if you put some focus on that, I think you'll do very well. Thank you again. And Miss Young, I wanted to actually hire her to speak for me because I have a lot more to say. She could have done it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anybody else who would like to speak on the Melrose Lane MSBU? Chair will entertain the motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we go forward with Melrose Landing paving MSBU process.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
I have a question.
Okay.
Can you explain the 50% plus point, so there's no misunderstanding?
Well, if there's 100 people, then 51 has to send back a yes on the letter we send out. 49, no. 50% plus one person has to send it back in that they want an MSBU in the area. Okay, very simple.
All right, so if there's 100 and 51, all right, is that, so a no, I mean, no, when you don't send anything, is that, what is that? Counts as a no? It's a no.
It's a no. We tried to change that a while back and we did it illegally. So you can't, we tried to make it if you didn't send one back, that was a yes. That wasn't legal according to council. So we had to reverse that decision and make it to where you have to get a letter from them and it has to say yes to be counted as a 50% plus one.
But it's still a total of the lots or parcels?
Total of the owners, I believe. Lots, owners of lots, yes. If you own 5 lots, you get 5 votes in other words.
And if you don't send any of them in, that's 5 no's.
It's 5 votes.
I just want to make sure, this is on record.
So I understand, sir, I get it.
Down to
And I'm sure Commissioner Harvey has certainly explained that as well as he could. But I thank you for bringing that up. Is there any more discussion?
Yeah.
Okay, Commissioner Adams, aye.
I just want to think, I think this is a great location to do this as far as an MSBU goes. I've been there a few times, and it's great out there. I used to live down Baden-Powell Road, a little bit from there, my first home that I had here. The question, the thing I just want to reiterate to you guys, because we've had 2 different groups attempt this in the last year, and one was fairly close. One, they thought that was a slam dunk, and they only got, I think, 16 or 20% of the people said yes. So just make sure you're doing your groundwork with the other people and the people that live out of town. However you can, to contact them and say a non-response is a no. I think that's what Commissioner Pickens and Turner are getting at. And it sounds like from your petitions that you guys kind of are set, but if they just forget to send it in too, that's still a no. So just wanted to give you that. I want this to happen, and I think it's a great opportunity for an MSBU paving. And just make sure you get with all your neighbors and landowners out there. Thank you.
We have a motion on the floor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, ayes have it. Motion carries unanimously. Okay, we're going to move on to Violet Lake paving MSBU discussion. I don't have any green cards on Violet Lake, but basically it's the exact same thing we just went through. Do any of you guys want to come up and speak after hearing that process just now?
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind.
Okay.
We have spent quite a bit of time with Mr. Shelton and Mr. Owner out there, Mr. Laney. We've met 3 times with the landowners out there. Believe me, both groups have a war room. They have maps. They know who they're keeping track of, who's going to vote yes and who's going to vote no. I'm sure the 50% plus one is going to happen. But both of the areas, this one's a little different though. This is coming out of a current MSBU, upgrading one, and they're going to try to establish a paving one. This is not unprecedented for the county. It happened in front of my home. I was part of ILE grading, as you are over there on Violet Lake, and we decided we wanted paving. So we took ourselves out of the grade, developed a new paving MSBU, and assessed ourselves whatever the amount of money was to make that happen. So this is not unusual, and both committees have worked very hard to get this done. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is that a motion to move that
It
one
is,
forward?
Mr. Chairman, move forward.
Have a motion and a second to move the Violet Lake paving MSBU forward. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, ayes have it. Motion carries unanimously.
Mr. Chairman, on the next item, if you don't mind, I will take just a moment We're not ready for prime time on this one just yet, but I do want to tell you about this a little bit. Baden-Powell and Main Street is a very undeveloped area out in West Putnam. It's south of Melrose Landing, but we have a person out there who owns 930 some odd lots out there. He is developing homes in that area, or his plan is to develop homes. So I think it's a potential of 600 and some odd houses. Is that correct, JR? This is also one where the guy who owns some property would like to donate some property for a fire department. That's neither here nor there in this discussion. What gives me heartburn in this discussion, and I've shared it with our staff, I've shared it with our clerk of the court, and he is actually trying to work on some solutions. But this is going to affect possibly one landowner to, well, more than one landowner, but he'll have the majority of the votes. And that's why I'm not ready to bring this to you right now. I wanted to have this talk, but I've asked our clerk to step in, find ways that the board and the county can be protected so we don't have one landowner who's controlling all the votes that happened out in that area. And that's where I'd like to leave that today, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman.
Well, very difficult to do that, because if you own 50 lots in a subdivision, then you should have 50 votes. Even if you don't agree, I'm sorry, go by the 49 lots from him, he'll have one vote. But usually they do it for investment reasons or whatever, and if it's not in their best. I understand what you're saying, though. They can hold you up from getting everybody else getting what they want, but in all reality, you get a lot, you get a vote per lot, and unless we're going to change that, I don't know how to fix it.
Well, I don't think there is, but if there was 900 different property owners, this commission would feel great about it. But if the county went out there and invested, say, $3 to $4 million in roads, and this guy says, you know what, I'm not going to do what I'm going to do, and those properties are sheet to the county, we're on the hook for that. And so that's why I've asked our clerk, Mr. Reynolds, to kind of look at maybe some ways that we can protect the county in that process. Again, I'm all for MSBU. You know I'm a big proponent. But when you have one guy that's going to control all that, we need to make sure our I's are dotted and our T's are crossed on that.
So basically today, you just wanted to discuss that and nothing else further to do.
Correct.
So if anybody does, Commissioner Adams, Zach, you had your
I agree with Commissioner Turner on this. If the person happened to buy 900 lots and they have the vote, they should be entitled to make the vote, and that's the way it works. I think that this particular area is a prime place of dry land that absolutely is a place that we can grow the county, and then doing MSBU, which ultimately the landowners are going to pay. I guess your fear is that he defaults on all 900 lots. Is that what I'm understanding?
Well, I'm not that. You know, Commissioner Turner says I'm very compassionate. Remember that last meeting?
Yeah.
Very trusting.
On some issues, yes.
And I am, but on this one, I want to tap the brake just a little to make sure that the county's well protected in that.
Yeah.
That's all.
I agree that I'm actually for this if it goes through. I lived there, and if there's an area, I mean, that's where I lived in my prior house, was right on Westlake. That's the area that's ripe in West Putnam to do something where it doesn't really impact agriculture. It impacts very few homes outside of the people right there. A lot of it is desolate, like you're saying. A lot of them side roads, there's not a house on them. So there's 3 miles, and we used to walk them and never saw a car in the 2 years we lived there. And they're so desolate, there's boats dumped in the middle of the road. We renamed the roads based on the type of garbage that was in the middle of the road. So I'm just saying that it's a better use, and hopefully that goes forward. And anything I can do to help you get over your concerns, I guess we can't do it except for here. But hopefully that helps you get over that concern, because that's an area that needs something. Thank you.
We'll bring it back at next meeting, Mr. Chairman, if that's okay with some solutions.
Well, if you're ready, would you just bring it back when you're ready, sir? Thank you. Be under new business again, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Okay, so today we're going to talk, item H, we're going to talk about the Tinsley Road speed limit discussion.
Correct. Mr. Chairman, back in June of last year, the young man that got hit by a car out there, the father had contacted me about would the county be interested in changing the speed limit from 35 to something out there. Tinsley goes from Coral Farms over to Holloway Grade, if you will. And we also know that signs don't make lower it down. We could go administratively, I think they can go to 30, and we can go less than that if you want to. But we've had really no pushback from anybody about lowering it. So my recommendation is a couple signs, lower it to 30 miles an hour, and, you know, try to slow traffic down just a little bit.
I certainly don't have any problem supporting you in this endeavor for sure. But sometimes when you think there's no opposition, you go out and do it, and you'll find out just how much opposition there really is. Not like on 9 Mile Swamp out there when they decided to drop that from 55 to 45, people came out of the works with hatchets and pitchforks. And that was a state road, and so until they got it back up to 60 or 65, and so, you know, if you want to give that a whirl, I'll certainly support you, Commissioner Harvey, but keep in mind, you're also going to take the fallout from it too. That's Commissioner Harvey's project right there.
Take the fallout. Thank you.
Okay, so would you make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to.
Just 1 second, please. Do we have the authority to drop the speed limit to 30 miles an hour on that road?
Sit out there and count.
Or we can just, can we, is it easy?
I can do that.
I'm not trying to joke and be smart. I'm asking a serious question. And the serious question is, do we have the authority to drop this to 30? Because I think we'll find out within just a few weeks after that if it's all right or not with the area residents. We do the smoke test. That's what they call it when electricians hook things up and everybody's in the room with a fire extinguisher. It's a smoke test. We'll do this road as a smoke test. We'll drop it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right. So would it be legal, do you think, to drop this from 35 to 30? Okay, we're going to hold off on this issue while you do a little research, and I'm gonna go ahead and move in to the next issue, which is item I on the agenda. Right now we have sewer on the west side of, or I guess the south side of 100, all the way down to basically Elsie Drive. There's one enclave in there from Elsie Drive all the way down to FPL that doesn't have, which is Rio Vista and overlooking that whole area, that doesn't have sewer now, even though they have water. We have a proposal and we have engineering for the project, which is just preliminary engineering for the project, and the budget figure of $406,101.56. Option number 3 on this agenda, option number 3 was less. It was like 356 or something. So what I would like to do, and they said they didn't recommend the option, but after we talked to them, what they didn't recommend is that we did a bunch of different connections. This is just 2. And so they basically said that we would be all right just doing 2 connections to the main across the street instead of running it across the street and then up to the force main all the way up at the next block, which saves us about 50 grand, give or take. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to request $400,000 in ARPA money, and the money that we would, using the money to put in the backbone, which I think is going to be in the 350-55 range, and use the rest of the money to actually pay to hook up residents in the area to the sewer And then that'll give us basically sewer right from FPL all the way to the bridge on the south side of 100. It'll close in that whole area. So that's the request today. Could we get 400,000 ARPA money?
Mr. Chairman, I move approval.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, excuse me,
Yeah,
Paul,
you're
go ahead.
So this would get us not sewer all the way to the bridge on 17.
South, excuse me, yes.
So through that commercial area,
17 from the bridge out to Florida Power and Light. I'm sorry if I gave the wrong lead.
yeah, okay. In this case, because of the corridor we're doing it, I actually support it. So I know that flies against everything I've ever said about sewer, but I believe in doing those type of corridors. So. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. Good deal. And we're gonna go back. Are you ready for us to come back to you, Rich? Can we drop that from 35 to 30 legally? After we do a study. How much does that cost? It's gonna have to sound to me like we can't do this the easy way, Commissioner Harvey. We're gonna have to do it the government way.
Wasn't there a countywide?
Why don't we table this and I'll bring it back and find out what we can do.
I thought we were in the process of eventually doing a countywide. Could we just add that to that, or oh, okay, it's already completed. No, but if we could have added it to that list, then maybe it would have been more cost
Mr.
effective.
Chairman, if I could table that till the next meeting.
Actually, I'm just gonna remove it, and you can bring it back at the next meeting with your other item if you deem it to be necessary. That way we don't have to hear it at the next meeting. It's not part of the newspaper advertising. Okay, we're gonna move down to item 9. Thomas, could you start moving your way up there, please, sir? Codes case number 2014-326. What I like about Thomas, he gives us the short and skinny.
Address is 696 State Road 20. Property owner's name is Home to Sell Investments LLC. The violation was non-residential maintenance and building care premises. The original fine amount was $61,896.61. Total cost for enforcement action was $2,097. The property owner recently purchased the property, is now compliant, and requesting a fine reduction. If the board approves, we recommend the reduced fine to be paid within 90 days.
Is there anybody here today that would like to speak for or against this case?
Mr. Chairman, with enthusiasm, I want to recommend that the board accept $2,097 if paid within 90 days, because this has been an eyesore for a long time.
Have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, ayes have it, motion carried unanimously. 2017-0018 case.
This is the same property. Address is 696 State Road 20. Property owner's name is Home to Sell Investments LLC. The violation was non-residential building violations from maintenance, unsanitary, and unsafe. The original fine amount was $27,041.13. The property owners recently purchased the property. It is now compliant and with the fine reduction. If the board approves, we recommend the reduced fine to be paid within 90 days.
And if I remember right, the reason there's two on the same is once one closes out, because it's at some point, then they got to start another case. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. We had taken the first one already to special magistrate for that one violation. And then when we went out there to re-inspect at a later date, found it unsafe. So we had to open up another.
Mr. Chairman, with enthusiasm again, on case number 2017-00018, I would proposed staff recommendations of $2,324 if paid within 90 days.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. Thank you, Thomas. Mr. Moore, excuse me. Next is item 10, the Honorable Matt Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just real quick, I want to thank Commissioner Pickens for your kind comments about staff. Be sure to go back and tell Cindy about that. That will definitely make her day. So thank you for that. Also to update the board, last time we talked about investments. I was going to enter into a contract with a firm, PFM, Public Financial Management. We had our kickoff meeting with them yesterday. We discussed multiple different things, but the big thing that will be coming back board, we'll be looking to revise the county's investment policy, and that's what allows me as comptroller to invest in different categories, different areas. And so once we have that full investment policy drafted, we'll be bringing it back to the board to have you guys take a look at adopting. The last thing I have is I just want to take a minute to publicly thank County Administrator Terry Suggs and Deputy County Administrator Julianne Young for attending the Leadership Academy that I've been putting on down at my office. They attended our second one. My staff were extremely appreciative of both of their involvement in that class because they brought perspective of local government that some of my staff just hadn't been exposed to. And so it turned into a very good class for my staff. And so I just wanted to publicly thank them for that. And also, I do have certificates for both of you that I can present to both of you for having completed the class. So again, thank you both. Really appreciate that. Yeah, come down here, and I didn't know if they wanted pictures. Yay!
I'll walk up front and get your prize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was all I had.
You done, Matt. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Congratulations, Ms. Young and Mr. Sugg, for your special award. So we're going to move on to appointments. Commissioner Adams Act, do you have any today? Commissioner Harvey?
I have none.
Mr. Pickens? I have none. Commissioner Wilkinson?
Better Place Plan Oversight Committee for District 2, Charles Smith. Planning Commission, District 2, Chris Hancock. And I would like to ask the board to consider Greenbelt Advisory at-large position for Freddie Garrett.
Which one was that? Belt Advisory?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we have a nomination for Greenbelt. I don't have to, for a nomination, I don't have to have a second, just vote, because it's an at-large position.
Yes, sir.
So we have a nomination for Freddie Garrett. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Okay, and then on Waterways and Trails, an at-large position, I'd like to appoint Buddy Goddard.
Okay, we have a nomination for Waterways and Trails at large. Buddy Goddard, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries unanimously.
And then I have, I understand that on these MSBUs, that it's the commissioner's duty to appoint, what's the right word I'm looking for? The committee. So for the St. John's MSBU appointments, I'd like to appoint Bill Thompson, Francis Gasson, Gasson, Gary Copen, and Andrew Floyd, and they're waiting on on a fifth person. We don't have a fifth person this time, but we do have 4. I'll get to you.
Is that like an appointment from district, or is that appointment from the board? So that's just an appointment, not a.
Yes, sir. So what came to light recently when we were working on these MSBU's is a old ordinance that requires the commissioner presiding over the district in which the MSBU is governed to make an annual appointment of 5 committee members. And so that is solely that commissioner's appointment to allow that governing body. Yep. And so we haven't gotten to all the commissioners who have MSBU, Commissioner Turner, Commissioner Adams Act, with this information. So we will be contacting you as well so that you can begin thinking about your 5 appointments. Commissioner Wilkinson was eager and overachiever at the moment. So she's ahead of me.
We can't seem to get 5 people to show up to the MSP.
There's gonna be certain ones you're gonna have a hard time getting 5 people to show up.
So that's all I have, sir.
Okay, thank you. So, let's see, I asked Commissioner Pickens already, and I have none to add today, so good. Public comment on miscellaneous items. This portion of the agenda is designed to allow citizens an opportunity to bring matters to the attention of the board. It's not reasonable to expect the board will engage or deliberate on the matters on which the board has no previous or prior information. Please limit to 3 minutes. Public comment cards are conveniently placed in the meeting room entrance and should be submitted prior to the meeting to Deputy Clerk, who sits to the right, to your right, my left at the podium. And with that, I don't have any more public address cards. Does anybody here like to speak? Seeing none, we'll move on to the county administrator.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very brief. I have no comments on the meeting itself. It was a great meeting today, but I do want to thank Mr. Reynolds, Honorable Matt Reynolds, for the opportunity here today, but also thank you for putting on that leadership class, because Dr. Saviak does a really good job with that. You know, he really does. He's very prepared. And it was interesting to sit with your staff who's not exposed to what happens over here from day to day. And so it was very beneficial. And last but not least, thank you, because it fulfills my 40 hours of continuing ed credits for my credentialed manager certification. So thank you, sir.
Thank you, Administrator Suggs. County Attorney Commando. Thank you, Captain Commando. And from there, we're going to go to Commissioner's comments. I'm going to start with Commissioner Adams Act today.
Yeah, so before the day started, I actually had several things on my list, but they've been narrowed down from some of our discussions, so that's good news. I do have a question for Julianne. I guess it's because the email came back to the whole board from the guy from FWC about the eelgrass thing. So I do want to put this on the record. I do not support us having people facilitated to manage that. So that that's why I didn't respond when you did your response, but he didn't seem to respond back with anything. So if FWC isn't willing to engage with that part of it, I don't know where we go with it. I was looking at it, and I'll tell you what my vision was. My vision was the county puts up $25,000 or $50,000 towards buying the materials, then have an FWC have a plan for them, and then Citizen A comes in and says, I want to build the cage outside of my thing. They go to FWC, they get the approved plan or whatever. I understood that we would have to get the permit, right? And I think we could do that because it sounds like it's free or fairly inexpensive. But if they're not going to be a stakeholder in the planning implementation, I don't think we have the required expertise to do that. I don't want to hire a position to manage something that's just a $50,000 project. Now, with that said, I think it's behooves of everyone in our community, not just us commissioners and staff and whoever who has an interest in the river. I think we have to start really pushing our state legislator on the issue of the St. Johns River in general and its health, because the downfall of the clean water bill, beyond some other personal problems I have with it from taking home rule away from some counties and cities, is the idea that it really focused on South Florida and it left out the St. Johns River in many ways, which really is one of our main estuaries that needs to be preserved ecologically. There's a little bit in there about it, but it really focused on Orange River and all that stuff, and obviously Okeechobee and South, because that was the pressing matter. I don't know how we do that, but it's something I'm active in. Just encourage anyone that's listening, that's where we have to go, because the county of Putnam is never going to have enough funding to do the amount of eelgrass mitigation to cover all the way up to Jacksonville where it needs to be. It's got to be a multi-county, multi-agency thing, and it really has to start with the state. So whether we throw $250,000 at it or $500,000, it's a drop in the bucket of what's probably needed when you look at the cost that he gave us and probably how many miles you would need to actually mitigate it. Now, am I all for if they want to do a plan? I'll follow back up with him. I was just seeing if he responded to you again.
He did, yes, sir, and I did respond back to him, reiterating the county's position, and that after the last meeting, or at the last meeting where he spoke, there was some conversation about commissioners may reach out to their municipalities that lie within river-bound community to see if there was any partnership. At this time, I've not heard back from any of those municipalities that have expressed an interest in partnering with their dollars either. And he, at that point, that was December 21st, and I have not heard from him since that time.
So that was the one thing. And then, so at this time, I think it's just up to us to try to, as individuals. The other thing, I just reiterate the whole thing about the stuff to do in this county. I haven't said it in a while because the holidays, obviously, there's tons of things to do, but there's still tons of things for people to do here in Putnam. There's a lot of different festivals. The fair's coming soon. You know, hopefully the Azalea is coming, and the Blue Crab and everything else that has happened in the past is going to be coming back. And as we came out of COVID, things really spiked up. I hope that spike continues with the different festivals and different events. There's a lot of homegrown events you're seeing too, like, you know, Coventry Farms and different areas that are having one-off events, and the game farm out there by where we live in West Putnam, you know, has a regular thing on Saturdays where they have, you know, different people come in and vendors and sell things and do that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of cool things going on. If you're, like I've said in the past, unless if you absolutely dislike the outdoors, if you can't find something to do here on a Saturday, you're not trying or you're homebound. Those would be the two criteria that wouldn't allow you to. I mean, just given the number of trails, driving through the forest on my way after I went through Orange Springs Cutoff to go get my dad in Sanford, just the number of trails and resources in the forest part that's in Putnam County is amazing. And that's if you just stay on what's marked, right? If you really wanted to be an explorer and get off trail, I don't recommend it necessarily, but it's unlimited. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Really quickly, I wasn't planning on speaking about this, but since Commissioner Adams brought it up, you know, the thing about the eelgrass that really bothered me was the only reason they were here is because they saw money in the fishing fund. And I kind of was offended by that. If they thought it was really that important, I think they would have come in a different manner, but that's all I'm going to say about that. Next Friday here at the office, the Florida Association of Counties Trust is going to have a roundtable risk management meeting. Everyone's invited to it. I will be cooking some food for that, as always, so please avail yourself to the roundtable risk management thing that's going to be here at 11. I think it starts at 10 and done by 1:30 or something, but surrounding counties will be here. The 4th, isn't it? 3rd?
What time?
Yeah, February 3rd, 10 o'clock. Yeah. So if you want to be here, please make yourself available. Again, the Northeast Florida Regional Council is looking for a commissioner to serve on that. I was told to give people time to think about it. I'm sure they're still thinking about it, so we'll just leave it like that, okay?
I would be willing to serve on it.
What'd you say? You serve now, don't you?
We have actually a spot for the commissioner and the municipality in that time. Yes, I do.
Mr. Adams volunteered. What is the process? Just appointment? Any vote from the board? Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Adams for
Thank you, Commissioner Adams.
Absolutely.
And that concludes my comments, Mr. Chairman. Great meeting today.
Commissioner Pickens.
Thank you, Chairman Turner. First, I just want to thank the concerned citizens and group in Crescent City for putting on the Martin Luther King ceremony, January 16th. My wife and I participated in the march from South Bank to Eagle Lions Park, where there was a ceremony and various speakers there. And just remembering the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King. It was special this year because with the efforts of Angel Dukes and the commission and county staff, we were able to dedicate the A. Philip Randolph Memorial Highway this past year in 2022. And he worked with Dr. Martin Luther King, really was the civil rights leader before Dr. Martin Luther King. So it was a special event. It was the largest one that we've had in the last few years, so that was good. I want to commend the Police Athletic League and all the law enforcement people and people who are involved in PAL. They are teaming, I'm sure, with other places in the county, but they're teaming with South Putnam Church, which I'm a member of, and they're hosting a basketball league for the next few weeks, and we have over 100 youth signed up for that activity. And let's see, last but not least, Jenny Oakwood, who's the owner of Crescent City Kennel and involved in ARK Animal Rescue, they're offering Monday, January 30th from 1:30 to 5 p.m. No appointment necessary, but a low-cost pet vaccination clinic that day. So I'll give you all a flyer, so this hopefully will save some people money. Jenny has served on our Animal Services Advisory Board for a number of years until she moved out of Putnam County, but still stays, has a business in South Putnam and stays involved in the betterment for animals in South Putnam. So just want to bring this to your attention, and that's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Wilkins.
Just a couple things. Saturday, I attended the Life Fund Run out at Coventry Oaks, where they were able to raise $5,000 for a Women's Resource Center. And I think Craig McLean and Betty McLean did a great job in getting that organized, and it was certainly well attended. And I know it was in the paper this morning, but I just want to thank them because they did a great job on that. And then on the St. John's MSBU, we met last night in Bostwick, and I wanted to thank Sean Ladd and our MSBU coordinator, Tony. I can't pronounce his last name. Is that right? Yep. They were out there, the citizens. We probably had about 18 to 20 residents in that community that were very pleased that I had showed up along with staff to help with the goodness that they have. And I think that that's a good relationship building, and we're going to do, get some things done out in that area. So I'm glad that they were there, and I appreciate both of y'all being there and answering questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Young, did you have something to add?
I did, if you don't mind. While we're giving out recognitions, our fire rescue staff brought the last meeting that they were going to go out and do a fundraiser for a little young man that got burnt on Christmas Day this past year. They did a fundraiser, they did a boot drive campaign, and they were able to raise $23,000 to give to that young man's family. So that's absolutely fantastic, and I thought we just need to give it to the public and thank the public for everything they did, but they were able to raise almost $23,000 for that young man. And they have some other further efforts they're trying to do to help comfort that family in their desperate time of need. So I just want to bring that to your attention.
Is there anything else to come before the board? Let me know when. I'll try to pin these cats and get them all in the same room. One last thing, chamber event. We bought a table for the chamber event. I need to know with 8 seats. I need to know who is and is not going or whatever. There's room, so I think some of the commissioners also have other tables that they're agreed to sit at or whatever in addition to the county buying a table like we usually do every year. So are you planning on going, Commissioner, with it? Okay, so you would sit at the county table, and you think Linda may or may not go, but we'll save a chair in case she decides that she wants to go. Commissioner Adams-Act, do you care to attend and sit at the county's table? Okay. Okay, so Commissioner Adams-Act coming, Commissioner Pickens. I
think you're gonna be gone.
I'll be out of town.
Yeah, conflict, okay. So if y'all need some room, I think Commissioner Wilkinson and myself are actually sitting at Les Cindy's table, with our spouses, and so, you have 3 at your table, 4, 5, 6, 7, okay. Well, I just figured you wanted to know what commissioners may or may not be coming, and y'all can do whatever. If we fill it up with too much staff, whatever, I would be just buying another table. I would be for that if you need to get everybody that wants to go to go. That's just my opinion. Commissioner Pickens, did you have something to add, sir? Okay. So, if there's nothing else to come before the board today, I'm gonna adjourn this meeting.